Simon & Schuster Audio presents Sublime by Christina Lauren. Read by Elizabeth Louise and Cal Wembley.
Sublime. Number 1. Adjective. Transcendent. Complete. Absolute. Number 2. Transitive verb. To cause to pass directly from the solid to the vapor state. A slumber did my spirit seal. I had no human fears. She seemed a thing that could not feel the touch of earthly years. No motion has she now, no force. She neither hears nor sees. Rolled round in earth's diurnal course, with rocks and stones and trees. Sir William Wordsworth. Chapter 1. Her. The girl is bent into odd angles when she wakes. It doesn't seem possible that she could have been sleeping here, alone on a dirt path, surrounded by leaves and grass and clouds. She feels like she might have fallen from the sky. She sits up, dusty and disoriented. Behind her, a narrow trail turns and disappears, crowded with trees flaming garishly with fall colors. In front of her is a lake. It is calm and blue, its surface rippling only at the edges where shallow water meets rock. On instinct, she crawls to it and peers in, feeling a tug of instinctive pity for the confused girl staring back at her. Only when she stands does she see the hulking buildings looming at the perimeter of the park. Made of gray stone, they stand tall over the tips of fiery red trees, staring down at where she's landed. The buildings strike her as both welcoming and threatening, as if she's at that in-between stage of awake and asleep when it's possible for dreams and reality to coexist. Instead of being afraid, she feels a surge of excitement tear through her. Excitement like the sound of a gunshot to a sprinter. Go! She slips down the trail and across the dirt road to where the sidewalk abruptly begins. She doesn't remember putting on the silk dress she's wearing, printed with a delicate floral calico and falling in wispy folds to her knees. She stares at her unfamiliar feet, wrapped in stiff new sandals. Although she isn't cold, uniformed students walk past, wrapped in thick wool, navy and gray. Personality lies in the small additions: boots, earrings, the flash of a red scarf. But few bother to notice the wisp of a girl shuffling and hunched over, fighting against the weight of the wind. The smell of damp earth is familiar, as is the way the stone buildings capture the echoes of the quad and hold them tight, making time slow down and conversations last longer. From the way the wind whips all around her, and from her precious new memory of the trees in the woods, she also knows that it's autumn. But nothing looks like it did yesterday, and yesterday it was spring. An archway looms ahead, adorned with tarnished green-blue copper letters that seem to be written from the same ink as the sky. St. Ozana's Preparatory School for Girls and Boys, grades K through 12, established 1814. Beneath it, a broad iron sign lurches in the wind. And whosoever shall offend one of these little ones that believe in me, it is better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and he were cast into the sea. Mark 9:42. The campus is larger than she expects, but somehow she knows where to look, right, not left, to find the grouping of smaller brick buildings and, in the distance, a wood cabin. She moves forward with a different kind of excitement now, like walking into a warm house knowing what's for dinner. The familiar kind, except she has no idea where she is. Or who. Of the 4 main buildings, she chooses the one on the left, bordering the wilderness. The steps are crowded with students, but even so, no one helps her with the door, which seems intent on pushing her back outside with its own weight. The handle is leaden and dull in her grip, and beside it her skin seems to shimmer. "Close the door," someone calls. "It's freezing." The girl ducks into the entryway, breaking her attention from her own stardust skin. The air inside is warm and carries the familiar smell of bacon and coffee beans. She hovers near the door, but nobody looks up. It's as if she's any other student walking into a crowd. Life keeps moving in the roaring dining hall, and in a blurred frenzy, she stands perfectly still. She's not invisible. She can see her reflection in the window to her right, but she might as well be. Finally, she makes her way through a maze of tables and chairs to an old woman with a clipboard who stands at the doorway to the kitchen. She's ticking items off a list, her pen pressing and flicking in perfect, practiced check marks. A single question perches on the girl's tongue and sticks there, unmoving, while she waits for the old woman to notice her. The girl is afraid to speak. She doesn't even know herself, let alone how to ask the one question she needs answered. Glancing down, she sees that her skin glows faintly under the honeyed light fixture, and for the first time it occurs to her to worry that she doesn't look entirely normal. What if she opens her mouth and dissolves into a flock of ravens? What if she's lost her words along with her past? Get it together. "Excuse me," she says once, and then louder. The woman looks up, clearly surprised to find a stranger standing so close. She seems a mixture of confused and, eventually, uneasy as she takes in the dusty dress, the hair tangled with leaves. Her eyes scan the girl's face, searching as if a name perches near the back of her mind. "Are you? Can I help you?" The girl wants to ask, "Do you know me?" Instead, she says, "What day is it?" The woman's eyebrows move closer together as she looks the girl over. It wasn't the right question somehow, but she answers it anyway. "It's Tuesday." "But which Tuesday?" Pointing to a calendar behind her, the woman says, "Tuesday, October 4th. Only now does the girl realize that knowing the date doesn't help much, because although those numbers feel unfamiliar and wrong, she doesn't know what year it should be. The girl steps back, mumbling her thanks, and reclaims her place against the wall. She feels glued to this building, as if it's where she'll be found. "It's you," someone will say. "You're back! You're back!" But no one says that. The dining hall clears out over the next hour until only a group of giggling teenage girls remains seated at a round table in the corner. Now the girl is positive something is wrong. Not once do they look her way. Even in her moth-eaten memories, she knows how quickly teenage eyes seek out anyone different. From the kitchen, a boy emerges, pulling a red apron over his neck and tying it as he walks. Wild, dark curls fall into his eyes, and he flips them away with an unconscious shake of his head. In that moment, her silent heart twists beneath the empty walls of her chest, and she realizes, in the absence of hunger or thirst, discomfort or cold, this is the first physical sensation she's had since waking under a sky full of falling leaves. Her eyes move over every part of him, her lungs greedy for breath she doesn't remember needing before now. He's tall and lanky, managing somehow to look broad. His teeth are white, but the slightest bit crooked. A small silver ring curves around the center of his full bottom lip, and her fingers burn with the need to reach out and touch it. His nose has been broken at least once. But he's perfect. And something about the light in his eyes when he looks up makes her ache to share herself with him. But share what? Her mind? Her body? How can she share things she doesn't know? When he approaches the other table, the schoolgirls stop talking and watch him, eyes full of anticipation. "Hey," he greets them with a wave. "Grabbing a late breakfast?" A blonde girl with a strip of garish pink in her hair leans forward and slowly tugs his apron string loose. "Just came by to have something sweet." The boy grins, but it's a patient grin, flexed jaw, smile climbing only part way up his face, and he steps out of her grip, motioning to the buffet against the far wall. "Go grab whatever you want. I need to start clearing it out soon." "Jay said you guys did some pretty crazy stunts in the quarry yesterday," she says. "Yeah." He nods in a slow, easy movement and pushes a handful of wavy hair off his forehead. "We set up some jumps. It was pretty sick." A short pause and then, "You guys might want to grab some food real quick. Kitchen closed 5 minutes ago." Out of instinct, the girl glances to the kitchen and sees the old woman standing in the doorway and watching the boy. The woman blinks over to her then, studying with eyes both wary and unblinking. The girl is the first to look away. "Can't you sit and hang out for a few?" Pink-haired girl asks, her voice and lips heavy with a pout. "Sorry, Amanda. I have calc over in Henley. Just helping Dot finish up in the kitchen." He's fascinating to watch. His unhurried smile, the solid curve of his shoulders, and the comfortable way he slips his hands in his pockets and rocks on the balls of his feet. It's easy to tell why the schoolgirls want him to stay. But then he turns, blinking away from the table of his peers to the girl sitting alone, watching him. She can actually see the pulse in his neck begin to pound, and it seems to echo inside her own throat. And he sees her, bare legs and arms, wearing a spring dress in October. "You here for breakfast?" he asks. His voice vibrates through her. "Last call." Her mouth opens again, and what spills forward isn't what she expects, nor does she dissolve into a flock of ravens. "I think I'm here for you."
Chapter 2. Him. A week later. Colin hovers near the door, staring down at the fingers sticking out of the end of his newly set cast. They're big and awkward. Some are crooked from the older breaks he'd never had set. His knuckles are wide, his skin scarred from cuts and scrapes left to heal on their own. Today, his fingers look swollen, abused. He's finally managed to get the door open when his boss confronts him. "Colin," Dot says, her face set in a grim line. "Joe called and told me you've been at the infirmary all morning." She doesn't need to add, "Don't bother making an excuse," or, "I knew this would happen again." He exhales a shaky breath, and it condenses in the cold air in front of him. "I'm sorry, Dot," he says, letting the door close behind him. "Why are you apologizing to me? It's your arm in a cast." She clears her throat, her expression softening as she touches the plaster. "Broken this time?" He nods. "So why are you showing up for work?" Her apron is drenched. She's been doing dishes again, and Colin makes a mental note to kick Dane's ass for not finishing before he left for class. "I was coming to tell you I can't work for the next 2 weeks. The words burn as they come out. Working in the dining hall makes him feel less like a charity case. "Only 2? She cocks her head and looks straight at him, catching the lie. "Okay, 4. He fidgets, starting to reach to scratch his neck with the hand of his broken arm, and then winces, working to not grunt some cuss words in front of Dot. She was his mom's best friend, and the closest thing he's had to a grandmother for the past 12 years. The last thing he wants to do is upset her. "And you haven't been to basketball in 3 weeks, she says. His eyes widen, and she nods. "Yep, I know about that. Talked to Coach Tucker a week ago. He says they cut you from the team." "Come on, Dot. You know that kind of stuff isn't my thing." Dot narrows her eyes, considering him. "What is your thing exactly? Defying death? Driving the rest of us to drink, worrying about you? I've always loved your fire, kiddo, but I'm not going to tolerate any more of this insanity." "It's not insanity," Colin says against his better judgment. "It's biking." "Now that's a bald-faced lie. It's tricks and props and jumping from train cars to the tracks. It's riding on the train tracks and across bridges made out of rope over the quarry." His head snaps up, and Dot nods forcefully. "Oh yeah, I know about that too. You could have died out there. When will you realize you can only be so reckless before it's too far?" Colin curses under his breath. Does Joe know? No. He hears the layer of warning in her voice, the unspoken "not yet." "Slow down. The tricks, the racing, everything. I'm too old to lose this much sleep worrying about you." She pauses, considering her words before speaking. I know 17-year-old boys think they're invincible, but you, more than anyone, know how quickly people can be taken from us. I'm not going to let it happen to you. He bristles slightly, and Dot reaches for his arm. Just promise you'll be more careful. Promise you'll think. When he doesn't respond, she closes her eyes for a long beat. I'm cutting down your spending account and revoking your state parks pass. You're grounded to school property until I say otherwise. She glances at him, probably waiting for him to explode, but he knows it isn't worth it. Since Colin's parents died, Joe has kept Colin under his roof and handled the official details of Colin's meager inheritance, but Dot has the unofficial final say. The two of them give Colin miles of rope to proverbially hang himself and are always there to cut him loose when he almost does. This has been coming for a long time. He nods, hooking his bag over his shoulder before walking into the kitchen to cross his name off of his dining hall shifts. The marker squeals in the silence with a sound of finality, and he can feel the pressure of Dot's attention on his back. He hates disappointing her. He knows how much she worries about him. It's a constant, obsessive loop in her mind. It's why he hid in his room with a broken arm last night, instead of going straight to the infirmary. It's why Dot and Joe will never, ever know half the stupid shit he's done. Pulling his hood up against the wind, he grips the handrail as he climbs the steps of Henley Hall. The metal is cold and familiar beneath his palm, colder even than the autumn air that snakes around him. White paint has started to flake away, the surface marked with the scars of tires and skateboard axles, most of them his. The beginnings of rust bloom around the edges. What little sleep he got last night was broken up by stabbing pain. Now he's just sore and tired and not sure he can deal with today. He pushes through the door, and emptiness greets him. The space ticks dully with the synchronized rhythm of the clocks at either end of the long hallway. The halls don't stay empty for long, though. The bell rings, and he turns the corner to find Jay pressing a girl against a locker outside class, a set of red-tipped acrylic nails running through his dirty blonde hair. Jay looks back as Colin approaches, smirking at him over his shoulder. "About time you got here, slacker," he says. "You missed the world's most painful calculus class. I could practically hear my brain bleeding." Colin nods his chin in greeting, lifting his cast. "I think I'd have preferred calc over this." "I wouldn't be so sure." Jay's latest conquest reluctantly leaves as he and Colin walk into the classroom. Students continue to file in around them, and Colin drops his bag at a desk inside, bending to dig for his assignment. "So you were right," Jay says, motioning to the cast. "Broken?" "Yeah." As quickly as he can with one functioning arm, Colin finds his paper and stuffs everything else back in the bag. "Joe and Dot read you the riot act?" Jay's been at St. Hosanna's as long as Colin has, since kindergarten, and knows just as well that Dot has never appreciated the two boys' particular thirst for adventure. Colin looks at him pointedly. Dot did. Jay straightens. "Did she ground your fund money?" "Yeah, and I'm restricted to school property indefinitely. Thank God you took my bike to your parents' house last night, or she'd probably take that, too." "Brutal." Colin hums in agreement and hands his assignment to the teacher. What kills him the most is that this ride wasn't even that dangerous. A week ago, he jumped from the lip of the quarry onto a boulder at the base and came home without a scratch. But yesterday, he couldn't land even a rookie jump without wiping out. "Hood off, Colin," Mrs. Polsweski says. He pushes it off and shoves his hair back from his eyes as they move to their desks. Just as the second bell rings, she walks in. The girl from the dining hall. Colin hasn't seen her in a week, and he hasn't been able to stop thinking about what she said just before she ran out the door. "I think I'm here for you." Who says shit like that? He'd tried to call after her, but she was gone before the words dissolved in the air in front of him. She slips through the noisy room and takes the seat in the row next to his, moving her eyes to him and then quickly away. Her arms are empty, no books or paper, no backpack. A few people watch her sit down, but she moves so fluidly, she seems to already have joined the rhythm of the room. "If you can't ride for a whole month, we're going to need a plan," Jay whispers. "No way can you be stuck inside that long. You'll go insane." Colin hums, distracted. It's crazy. The girl seems otherworldly, almost as if a faint sheen of light surrounds the exposed skin on her arms. Her white blonde hair has been brushed free of leaves, and she has these badass black boots laced to her knees with a French blue Oxford tucked into the navy uniform skirt. Her lips are full and red, her eyes lined with thick lashes. She looks like she could rip through the wool of his trousers with only a dirty word. As if feeling him watching, she pulls her legs farther under the desk, her arms closer against her body. Jay pokes Colin right above his cast. "You're not going to let that little cast stop you from having fun, are you?" He pulls his eyes from the girl to look at Jay. "Are you kidding me? There's tons of other ways to get in trouble without leaving the grounds." Jay grins and bumps Colin's good fist. Mrs. Polsweski organizes her stack of papers at her desk, ignoring the flurry of hushed activity, books being opened, pages turning, and students grumbling, the occasional cough, a pencil being sharpened somewhere. The girl sits, staring ahead, looking like she's trying as hard as she can to not be noticed. Where has she been? In the periphery, Colin sees her thin fingers reach for a pencil that someone has left on the desk. She turns it over and over in her hand, as if the movement requires practice, examining it like she suspects it's a magic wand. Colin doesn't think he's ever seen such light hair before. When she tilts her head slightly, inspecting the pencil, her hair catches a dusty sunbeam, making it seem almost translucent. The strands twist and spill over shoulders that are hunched forward and wrapped in a shirt that's too bulky for someone so delicate. She looks like a shadow of a girl, a shadow wearing a cap of sunshine. As if she can feel him staring, she turns, an involuntary smile lifting the corner of her mouth. Her dimple makes him think of giggled pleas, mischievous promises, and the taste of sugar on his tongue. Gunmetal eyes meet his, and the color is alive, churning like an angry ocean, pulling him in. He lets himself drown.
Chapter 3. Her. The only person looking at her is the same boy whose face has haunted her all week, with wild dark hair that needs to be cut, an arm in a new cast, and eyes that pierce her, amber and fierce. "Hi," she rasps, tucking away her smile. Her voice is rough because this is the first time she's used it in 6 days. The first time she used it since she spoke to him and then burst from the dining room, intending to run into town to find the police and tell them she needed help. She could get only as far as a hulking metal campus gate a half-mile down the gravelly road. Each of the 3 times she tried to escape, one step past the gate put her right back on the trail where she woke up, as if she'd stepped into a skipping song. The boy's gaze narrows and slips across her cheeks, over her nose, pauses at her mouth. He blinks once, slowly, then again. "Where did you go?" Nowhere, she thinks, envisioning the empty shed she found in the middle of a barren field beside the school. It was as deserted as her memory bank, after all, and seemed the perfect home for a girl who has no name, no past. After being inexplicably drawn to this school building every morning for a week, she finally grew brave enough to steal a uniform, walk inside, and sit down. "You disappeared," he says. She shifts in her seat, glancing at his mouth. "I know. I wasn't quite sure how to follow up my stunning opening line." Laughing, he says, "Here," and pushes his open textbook closer to her. She blinks, the phantom trace of a pulse racing inside her throat at the way his eyes move over her face, the way he purses his lips slightly before smiling. "Thanks," she says, "but I'm okay. I can just listen." He shrugs but doesn't move away. "I think we're covering the history of labor management relations today. Wouldn't want you to miss out on the full experience." The girl isn't sure what to do with his attention. She suspects, from the way her skin seems to be aching to move closer to him, that he's the reason she's drawn here every morning, just as she found herself in the dining hall that first day. But he seems so sweet, almost too open, like she's a strip of paper dragged through poisoned honey, and this perfect boy flies innocently around her. How good can a girl be when she doesn't need to eat or sleep and keeps finding herself snapped back to school grounds every time she tries to leave? He continues to stare, and she shifts her hair over her shoulder, lowering it like a curtain between them. "Colin?" It's a woman's voice, clear and authoritative. The pressure of his gaze on her lifts. "Sorry, Mrs. Polzweski," he says. Now that the girl knows his name, she wants to whisper it over and over. "Who are you, honey?" the teacher asks. The room is a vast bubble, silent and pulsing with expectation, and the girl realizes that this Ms. Polzweski is speaking to her. But with the question hanging in the air, a man's voice speaks in the girl's mind. "I bet you didn't know your name means light," he whispered, lips too close to her ear. "I did know," she wanted to say, but the hand on her throat made it hard to even draw breath. "Lucia," she remembers in a gasp. "My name is Lucy." The teacher hums in acknowledgement. "Lucy, are you new?" Something inside Lucy stirs at the sound of someone else saying her name. For a heavy moment, she feels real, as if she's a balloon and someone has finally weighted her to the ground. Maybe a girl with a name won't float off into the sky. Lucy nods, and a phantom heat burns across her cheek where Colin's gaze settles again. "You're not on my roll, Lucy. Can you go to the office to check in?" "Sorry," Lucy says, fighting panic. "I just started today." Ms. Polzweski smiles. "You need to make sure to pick up your ad card. I'll sign it." Lucy nods again and slips away, wanting to disappear like a shadow into black. Lucy knew she'd be told to go, but she doesn't even know where the office is and isn't quite ready to brave the outdoors and the winds that weigh more than she does. And here her feet seem grounded anyway, keeping her from leaving. She sits at the end of the hall, knees to chest, waiting for the next tug of instinct to pull her up and forward. A door opens and closes shut with a quiet click. "Lucy?" It's one of the only two voices in the world that she's connected to a name, Colin, and it's hesitant and deep and quiet. It cuts straight down the hall, and his lanky figure moves just as smoothly straight to her. "Hey, do you need help finding the office?" She shakes her head, wishing she had something to gather to take with her so she could look purposeful and less like a lost girl sitting on the floor. Instead, she stands and turns, watching the lines of wood flooring weave a path in front of her as she walks away. She knows how it would go anyway. He would walk with her, notice how she fights the wind, ask if she's okay. And how would she respond? "I don't know. I only remembered my name 5 minutes ago." "Hey, wait." She reaches a door, but it's locked. She tries another beside it, also locked. "Lucy, wait," Colin says. "What are you looking for? You can't go in there. Those are janitor closets." She stops, turning to face him, and he's looking at her. Really looking, like he wants to capture every detail. When their eyes meet, he makes a strangled sound, narrowing his gaze and leaning closer to look. Her eyes are murky green-brown. She stared at them for hours in an old mirror, hoping to remember the girl behind them. "What?" she asks. "Why are you looking at me like that?" He shakes his head. "You're—" "I'm what? What will he say? What does he see?" He blinks again, slowly, and she realizes it's just something he does, an unselfconscious, unhurried blink, as if he's capturing an image of her and developing it on his lids. "Intense," he murmurs. With that word, the other man's voice appears in her head again, an echo from the same intrusive memory. "You have to know how intense this is for me." She stumbles back, eyes wide. "Are you okay?" Colin reaches for her arm, but she's already turning, hurrying away. With lips wet and pressed to her ear, he asked, "Are you afraid of dying?" "Lucy!" A flash of her reflection in a crisp blade of silver, breath smelling of coffee and sugar, cigarettes and delight, cool water lapping near her head, a knife drowning in her own blood, the feeling of being pried open. She burst through the side exit, sucking in a huge gasp of sharp autumn air. So that's who she is. She's the girl who isn't alive anymore.
Chapter 4. Him. "There's that new girl," Jay says through a mouthful of sandwich. Colin follows his gaze and grunts, non-committal, as Lucy glides across the soccer field. When she's alone, she's statuesque, long lines and slim profile. When she gets closer to the other students, she shrinks in on herself, shoulders pulled in, head down. She reminds him of himself after his parents died and he didn't, and the sadness and guilt felt like a crushing weight under his ribs. He didn't know how he was supposed to weather it. When people tried to talk to him at first, it made him wish he could turn into air and disperse in 1,000 different directions. Lucy carries that same kind of bewildered fragility. It's been 3 days since she showed up in his class, offered the most achingly vulnerable smile he'd ever seen, and then ran away again. Nobody talks to her, nobody looks at her. She has no books or even a backpack. She looks at every building as if she's trying to see through its walls to what lies inside. She always touches the outstretched arm of the statue of Saint Osanna Andreazzi as she passes through the darkest corner of the quad, pulling back as if she's been burned before reaching out to touch it again, carefully. No one ever touches the statue. It's said to be haunted. But Lucy does. Colin has never seen her with anyone. Lucy doesn't even go to the same classes every day. She kind of hovers around campus. He feels like a total stalker for knowing these things when everyone else seems content to let her be. Most new students get a schedule of classes and let the tide carry them. Lucy seems determined to remain disorganized. At least she looks more peaceful today, as if she's enjoying the weather before it all goes sub-zero. It's still a bit on the cool side, but she never wears a jacket. Thin blue fabric wraps down the length of her arms. How can she be warm enough? She must live off campus, he reasons. Maybe she left her coat at home. She seems weird, though, Jay says. This catches Colin's attention, and he looks over at Jay, wondering what he means. 2 nights now, Colin has fallen asleep, thinking about Lucy's mood-ring eyes. Does Jay notice too? Weird how? Jay shrugs and takes another bite, propping his feet on the wall of the arts building. His dirty sneakers blend into the gray concrete. She's been in my English class a few times. Doesn't talk much. And her eyes, too. Glancing at Colin, Jay asks, "Eyes?" "Never mind. They're, I don't know, different." "Different? Aren't they like brown or something?" Colin mumbles, "Maybe gray." But his heart is thundering. He's pretty sure if he says, They're like melted metal. Jay will actually have a T-shirt made for him with the words, "I am a delicate poet," printed across the chest. Brown hair, gray eyes, Jay says, as if reciting the ingredients for average. Colin pauses with his sandwich part way to his lips. He turns to Jay and follows his gaze again, making sure they're both looking at the same girl. They are. Brown? Colin asks, motioning to where she's reached the edge of the field. That girl over there? Yeah, Jay answers. The same one you've been staring at for the last 20 minutes. Lucy's hair isn't brown, it's not even close. Colin watches her again and shivers, pulling his hood up. Colin wonders if it should freak him out that Jay sees brown hair when he sees almost white blonde, but with a strange rush of warmth in his limbs, he finds he likes that he sees her differently. It feels strangely surreal, and it occurs to him that this reaction might come from the same part of his brain that turns on when he looks over a cliff, and instead of thinking, back off, he thinks, pedal faster. Amanda said they saw her walking down by the lake, Jay says. The lake? Yeah. She's new. Wouldn't know the stories, would she? Colin nods. No, she wouldn't know any of that. The stories are as old as the buildings here. Walkers out in daylight, wandering lost and confused. A man in military uniform sitting on the bench near the lake. A girl vanishing between two trees. Sometimes a student will claim a walker tried to talk to them, or, worse, grab them. But it's all ghost stories, a legend built on the morbid history of the school. The Catholic institution was built on grounds where deceased children of settlers were buried before the survivors made their long trek through the mountains. But in the first week the school was open, 2 more kids died in a fire that burned down the chapel. For years, students claimed to see the 2 lost children standing by the newly erected statue of Saint Hosanna, or sitting in a pew in the rebuilt chapel. The legend lived on, and over time, the population of walkers grew in the students' collective imagination. It's a morbid history, Colin knows, and the students keep the stories alive because it makes the school interesting and makes them sound brave. But even though everyone swears they don't believe the walkers exist, only stoners and drunk kids given a dare on Halloween hang at the lake or deep in the woods. Or dumbasses like him and Jay, who are doing shit they don't want to get busted for. Of course, Amanda would be the one to have seen Lucy there. Jay pulls his feet from the wall. You like her. Colin bends and ties shoelaces that don't need tying. It's cool if you like her. She's not ugly or anything, but she's, I don't know, quiet. Jay takes a long pull from his water bottle, which isn't always a bad thing. Amanda would never shut up. God, was she always talking when you guys were... Dude. Colin doesn't want to think about another girl while he's watching Lucy. It feels wrong, like comparing a river stone to a ruby. She totally was, Jay guesses, and makes a yapping gesture with his hand. Oh, Colin, Colin, Colin! He gasps in a high, breathy voice. Colin doesn't reply, choosing instead to shove a handful of chips in his mouth. Jay actually does a fairly good Amanda impersonation. Have you talked to her? Jay asks. Amanda? New girl. Colin shrugs and wipes his palms on his jeans. Once or twice. Last time I tried, she ran away. That's because you're a dick, Jay says with a punch to his arm. A nice dick, but still a dick. Colin pauses before balling up his garbage and tossing it into the trash. You called me a nice dick. Jay winks at him, but 2 seconds later punches his good arm again. So you're going to talk to her or what? Colin shrugs, but of course he knows he will. "All right, lover boy," Jay says, stretching his arms over his head. "This chat's been great, but I told Shelby I'd meet her behind the school." You're a walking cliché. Jay cycles through girls the way Colin goes through bike tires, only used for a few wild rides. Ignoring the comment, Jay juts his chin toward where Lucy has turned and is walking back toward the quad, only 20 or so feet away. She's coming back. For a brief moment, Lucy's eyes catch Colin's and hold on. And even though he thinks she's been watching him too, suddenly she's walking faster and veering away from where he sits. "Make me proud," Jay says, clapping a hand on Colin's back before walking away. Colin stands and crosses the soccer field, accelerating his long strides to catch her. He has no idea what to say. It doesn't feel the same as approaching one of the girls from school, the girls who knew him when he was 5 and couldn't write the letter S. The girls who knew him when he was 10 and wore the same Han Solo shirt for an entire week. The girls who, lately, never seemed to say no. This feels like approaching an exotic snake on a trail. As if she knows he's there, Lucy turns and looks at him over her shoulder. "Hey," he says nervously, shoving his good hand into his pocket. The fingers of his other hand twitch at his side. She frowns and keeps moving along the grass. "I didn't see you eat anything," he continues, moving in to step beside her. "Weren't you hungry? Dot makes the best grilled cheese." Lucy gives only a small shake of her head, but the response is enough to make something like hope spread in his chest. "Are you cold? I have a fleece in my room." He cringes inwardly. That sounded like a bad pickup line. They walk for another minute in silence, leaves crunching beneath the soles of their shoes. Although it's weird how quiet she is, for some reason he doesn't feel ignored either. "Did you move here?" Ducking his head, he smiles at her. "It's like you just showed up one day." There's a slight falter in her steps, but nothing else. Colin studies her profile. Creamy, pale skin and bee-stung lips that stick out in kind of a hot pout. "Where did you go to school before?" he asks. Lucy picks up her pace, but doesn't answer. He's decided to give up and turn away when she slows, motioning to his cast. "How did you hurt your arm?" He flexes the fingers of his left hand on instinct. "On my bike. I didn't quite land a jump." "Does it hurt?" she asks. Her voice is scratchy, like she was at a show last night, screaming her head off. He imagines her dancing alone, rocking out, not giving a crap what anyone thinks. "Nah, I've had worse. Broken bones, fractures, concussions, stitches, you name it. This is nothing." He stops talking abruptly, realizing he sounds like a frat boy bragging about slamming a beer can against his forehead. Lucy frowns again. "Why would you do those things if you keep hurting yourself?" Without thinking, Colin says, "For the rush, the burst of adrenaline, that feeling you get when you do something that reminds you you're alive." Lucy stops in her tracks. Her face goes blank, and her arms wrap protectively around her stomach. "I have to go." "Wait," he says, but it's too late. With long, determined strides, she walks away.
Chapter 5. Her. Once Lucy remembers what happened to her, a tangle of other memories connect, plugging together bundles of fine, tenuous synapses. She remembers her loud, barking laugh, forever skinny arms, and hair so straight it slipped right out of clips and bands. A gift for chemistry, but also art, fear of dogs, and a love for the smell of oranges. She remembers the face of her first teacher, but not her father. She remembers her favorite torn jeans and a Cookie Monster sweatshirt she wanted to wear every day when she was little. In other words, she remembers nothing that tells her anything about why she's here instead of floating on a cloud somewhere, or beneath the trails and pavement dancing in flames. And it's that question, why am I here, that begins to eat away at her quiet, composed shell. Questions burn on her tongue, wanting to be screamed into the cold, but she knows there's no one to answer them. She spent hours since she woke trying to understand what she is. If she's back where she was killed, then is she a ghost? And if she is, then how can she wear clothes and open doors and even be seen? Is she an angel who came crashing through the clouds and landed on the trail? Then where are her wings? Where is her sense of purpose? Her chest aches with the tickling anxiety that she could disappear as quickly and mysteriously as she appeared. Somehow, the idea of leaving and being sent elsewhere is more terrifying than the idea of staying here as a shadow. At least here is familiar. Elsewhere might be the stuff of nightmares, stitched together monsters and blue-black darkness, yellowed claws and misery. So much about this strange life doesn't make sense. There's the statue in the quad, the one with the outstretched arms and heavy marble cloak draped over her shoulders. Lucy is convinced she's touched it 100 times before, but now it doesn't feel right. Or at least, it feels more right than stone should. The first time Lucy let her hand linger on the delicately carved fingers, trying to remember the exact moment she'd felt it before and marveling at the strange texture. But last time she jerked away, convinced she felt a faint warmth beneath the marble skin and certain one of the fingers had moved. Other students make a wide arc around the statue when they pass, but to Lucy, it beckons. It feels like one more thing that separates her from the students around her. Her skin turns almost translucent in the sunshine. Normal objects like pencils and stones fascinate her when she stares at them, but when she picks them up, they grow dull in her hand. She's solid enough to wear clothes, but they weigh a good deal more than she does, and she never loses awareness of them, stiff and touching her everywhere. Her mind is full of questions and empty of memories. It's as if she's been dropped here and is waiting, suspended, for her fall to make a sound. The unknown of it all sometimes slips in and makes her feel breathless, tight in the chest, panicked. In those moments, Lucy closes her eyes and shuts out everything but the quiet. She's here, a ghost in girls' clothing, haunting this private school. She should just get used to it. But she doesn't want to haunt anyone. She wants to be tangible and solid, to sleep in a dorm and eat in the dining hall and flirt with him. All she wants is to be near him. And he seems to want it too. Colin follows her everywhere, and where she feels as if she's built of a million questions and doubts, he seems to be only instinct, happy to simply be near her. His presence raises a warm, soothing hum beneath her skin. He's behind her as she walks down the halls between classes. Sometimes he walks beside her and talks about everything, even though she rarely answers what he asks. He's stopped offering to share his lunch. He's stopped offering to share his books. Since that first day in the hall, he's never tried to touch her, but he hasn't yet revoked his company. She isolates herself at school because she feels so other. She's unable to throw away the clothes she woke up wearing, but they feel like a hook to another place, piled in the corner of the old shed she's found. Every time Lucy looks at them, she knows she wore them when she laid buried somewhere. The new stolen uniform hangs limp on her bony frame. She tells herself to keep going to classes because, really, what else does she have? At least here she can be near him, and the closer he is, the more she relaxes. Is it dangerous to want so much to know someone without first knowing yourself? She pretends she's wandering the campus, not seeking him out, but is flooded with a wild, charged excitement when she finds him in the parking lot near the security gates, riding a BMX with the other guy she always sees with him. His friend, Jay, she remembers, is good-looking, a bit shorter but wiry with a constant smirk. His gaze slips past her to focus on Colin as Lucy approaches. Then Jay stands on his pedals and moves away. Hey, Lucy calls, and she thinks she said it too quietly, but Colin's head snaps up and his eyes go wide. She sees his face every time she closes her eyes, but the reality of him in person still surprises her. He pedals over, 2 long limbs and 2 long hair, hopping off his bike while it continues to come to a skidding stop only inches from her legs. He looks impressed that she hasn't stepped back. Hey, Lucy. She swallows, unprepared for how intimate it feels when he says her name. How can you bike with a broken arm? He shrugs, but something is illuminated behind his eyes, and she recognizes it as joy.
We're playing around to see if I'll be able to hit a trail later this week.
A small tug in her chest, a flutter. With one arm?
Yep.
He grins, and the combination of the wonky bottom tooth that overlaps its twin and the small metal ring hugging his lip make her blink and look away so she can process his answer.
My legs are fine, and I only need one good arm to steer.
She nods and smooths the wisps of hair off her face. Are you following me? She expects embarrassment or defensiveness, but he laughs, wiping his forehead on the sleeve of his non-casted arm.
Am I following you?
His eyes move to his bike and then back to her, playful.
Not at the moment.
She's embarrassed, fighting a smile. You know what I mean.
I do,
he says.
And yeah, I guess I have been.
He pauses while he looks at every part of her face.
I mean, we both know I have been.
His smile widens then, invading every feature and making his eyes brighten last and best. She wants to stare at him. Long lashes drop slowly as his eyes close, as if developing another image. She loves his blink. It's a strange fascination she has, but she wants to ask him what he sees behind his lids. Why? She asks.
Why am I following you?
She nods, and his playful smile disappears.
I don't know.
You don't look at me the way the other students do, she says. He studies her in that way he has, like every day is made up of hundreds of hours and he's not in any hurry to wrap up his inspection.
How do other students look at you?
They don't. He shrugs and his eyes soften.
Then they're idiots.
Every inch of her skin aches to be near him, but the doubts roll back in, gray as rain clouds. He has no instinct to protect himself from the strangeness of her. Is she supposed to believe he hasn't noticed that she's different? You shouldn't follow me. I'm not who you think I am. He rolls his eyes.
That's kind of dramatic.
I know it is. That's my point. He moves closer, expression soft.
Did you come here to find me and tell me to stop coming to find you?
She shrugs, fighting another smile.
That seems like a poor use of your lunch break. You could have waited for me to find you later. It's in my plan, right after chemistry.
Seriously, Colin, you shouldn't—
It isn't that easy,
he interrupts. All teasing is gone from his eyes as he looks up to the sky, and he's blushing hotly, slowing himself down. His voice drops to barely a whisper, and he admits,
I don't know why, okay? I just want to get to know you, and I can't seem to stay away.
Lucy drinks in his full lips, his hungry expression, and his earnest attention, and tries to keep it safe somewhere inside. Colin. He exhales a puff of air, saying shakily,
What?
She looks away, up at the dense autumn storm clouds now beginning to form, green with electricity and heavy with rain. Like you said, I'm a dramatic girl. She smiles, feeling her skin hum with electricity at the way he's hanging on her every word. Don't boys hate that?
Usually.
He licks his lips, tracing the shape of the silver ring. Seriously, though, she says, dragging her gaze away from his mouth. Her chest, it aches. I don't even know what I'm doing here. He sees something in her eyes that keeps rejection from clouding his face. He blinks once, nods slowly as if he already knew this about her.
Okay.
He stares at her as she walks away. His focus is like a point of heat on her back. Did she really tell him to stay away? Now, as if there's a magnet behind her and she is composed of shards of scrap metal, she feels almost irresistibly pulled backward. Ahead is the cabin at the edge of campus, and a man in khakis and a sweater stands on the porch, stretching in the crisp air. A small plaque at the foot of the walkway leading to the home reads, William P. Vernon Memorial Residence, Joseph Velasquez, Headmaster. As she passes the path to the steps, the man she assumes is Joseph R. Velasquez doesn't even nod or smile or somehow acknowledge her. His focus is on the lot behind her where she's left Colin and Jay horsing around on their bikes. His eyes narrow, and what looks like exasperation moves through his body, deflating him.
Colin Novak,
he yells, irritation thickening his voice.
The doc said no riding.
Pressure builds inside her chest, a balloon that fills with some indescribable need until it's so strong, so full, she fears her ribs might crack beneath the strain. She feels angry, but she has no idea why. And as his words echo past her to the quad, bouncing back and joining the whispers of Colin's name that repeat in her thoughts, the man glances at her, horror appearing on his face before the sturdy porch groans, and in a sharp snap, wood planks splinter. It happens so fast, but in Lucy's mind it feels like each event occurs in slow succession. Wood cracks. Velasquez pitches first forward and then back as his legs break through the porch and he falls beneath. His surprised cry echoes across the lawn. The balloon bursts, and relief seeps into each corner of her body. She breathes again, gasps as if it's the first breath she's ever taken. And she's horrified. Lucy scrambles up the steps and reaches for his hand before immediately pulling back. She's never touched anyone, not in this body. She doesn't even know if she can be touched. Instinct presses her back. He looks up from where he landed, waist deep under the porch and grimacing in pain.
Go away,
he says, pleading with her. She takes another step back, hands moving to cover her mouth in silent apology. But her face is unrecognizable beneath her fingers, as if heat and anger have torn away her skin. I don't think I can pull you out, she says, too quiet, aching with apology but unwilling to move closer, almost as if an invisible wall stands between her and the wounded man. He looks at her in awe, and she steps back, holding her hands up. I'm afraid to try, in case... Shouts from the lot reach her, and footsteps pound down the sloping lawn. Colin, with Jay close behind him, shouting, Joe! Oh my God, Joe! Colin buckles when he reaches the gaping hole in the porch, and he and Jay struggle to heave out a dusty and injured Mr. Velasquez. There's blood and torn fabric, and Lucy is oddly fascinated with the way the red blooms thickly through the fibers of his pants and pools beside Colin on the porch. I'll go get someone, she says.
Get Maggie,
Jay says to her, tearing a bit of his shirt and tying it around Mr. Velasquez's leg. Maggie?
Campus nurse. Hang on, I'll go with you. You got this, Col?
Colin nods numbly and watches as she steps away and begins backing down the stairs.
What happened, Lucy?
He fell through, she answers simply. Crimson blood almost reaches Colin's leg, and he scoots back before it touches him. Looking back down, Colin says quietly,
We'll get you fixed up, Joe.
Lucy turns to leave, uneasy with the odd sense of responsibility she's feeling, remembering the way Mr. Velasquez reacted as if her face told him something terrible was about to happen. Beside her, Jay is already scrolling through a list of names on what she's learned is a phone with a bright, colorful screen.
I'll walk with you,
he says. Lucy had been confused at first when she'd seen students staring down at and tapping the front of what looked like a tiny TV. She'd never seen anything like it in her life. I'm not from here, she thought. I'm not from now. She wonders what would happen if she tried to take one, to use it to call outside the school. Would the dialed call bounce back into the school grounds too? They head back down the trail in an uneasy rhythm as Jay passes on the details to Maggie, and Lucy works to match his frantic pace. The lawn rolls ahead, stark and so green it almost looks unreal. Will they walk to the infirmary together? Will she be required to explain how a seemingly sturdy porch simply caved in under the weight of a small man? For once, Lucy wishes the earth would open up and reclaim her, the girl with no answers. She turns and looks over her shoulder to where Colin remains bent over Mr. Velasquez, speaking quietly. Why is he so worried? Did you not see the man up to his chest and porch? The blood? Jay asks, a hint of sharp amusement in his voice. Lucy nods, tucking her chin and staring at the brilliant green grass bending only slightly beneath her feet. Her words echo back to her and sound ridiculous. Of course, I didn't mean he shouldn't be worried.
No, I know what you mean. He's more worried than most students would be, I guess.
Jay ducks to meet her eyes.
It's just that Colin miraculously survived this horrible accident that killed his parents, so accidents kind of freak him out. Plus, Joe's his godfather and, his one remaining semi-family member left on the planet.
Chapter 6. Him. Colin's been in the infirmary more times than he can count, but he's rarely been the one sitting beside the bed while someone else babbles under the influence of painkillers. Like a demon, or a ghoul, or something whose face melts, Joe mumbles. Everything's okay now, Colin reassures his godfather. Joe has been rambling about demons for almost an hour. It's the morphine. The door from the hallway opens, and Maggie comes in, carrying fresh bandages and a glass of water. She's barely in her 30s, but has the wisdom of a much older woman. It shows in the deep set of her frown and the persistent worry lines on her forehead. "How's he doing?" she asks Colin. Still going on about a face-melting demon, but he seems better. Maggie hums, lips tight, and pulls the sheet down to check Joe's bandage. "We should take this one to the hospital to be sure." "I'm fine," Joe growls, suddenly coherent. "We're not driving 2 hours for something you can do better here." "I can stitch you up, but this is deep. You'll have a nasty scar." "I'm staying put. Don't have anyone to impress with my flawless skin." "Chicks dig scars," Colin says, and ducks when Maggie pretends to smack his arm. Joe groans when Maggie peels away the blood-soaked bandage. Colin looks away, wincing. The cut is deep, but clean now, and Colin swears he saw a hint of bone. Maggie shoos him to the other side of the room while she stitches Joe up. His stomach turns at seeing Joe like this, obviously old, vulnerable. "Get out of here, kid," Maggie says, lifting her chin toward the door. "You're green." "I've never seen him like this." "Mm-hmm. And how do you think he felt seeing you worse off more times than any of us can count?" Colin knows she's right. He can remember being here or in the hospital after a nasty crash on his bike, with several broken ribs and a huge gash on his scalp. He'd wondered at the time if he were going to die. It seemed so matter-of-fact to him. Either he would or he wouldn't. It was simple. He never considered how they might feel to lose him. "Go on, get some sleep. I got this," Maggie says. Colin looks at the man on the bed. "You good, Joe?" Joe grunts as Maggie ties off a stitch. "I'll be back to work tomorrow," he says. The nurse laughs. "The hell you will." Colin is startled awake when Jay returns to the dorm room. Dim light from the hall slips across the walls and is gone just as quickly. "You'd better be alone," Colin says into his pillow. It's been a crazy day, and the last thing he wants to deal with tonight is one of Jay's girlfriends sneaking into their room. If caught, all 3 of them would get demerits. "I'm alone. Dude, I'm so tired." Colin hears the rustle of fabric, Jay swearing as he trips, and the muffled clunk of keys and shoes hitting the rug. The mattress across the room creaks as he collapses on his bed. He moans something and rolls onto his stomach. Jay's breathing evens out, and Colin opens an eye, trying to see the clock next to the bed. It's 4 a.m, somehow both too early and too late to easily guess where Jay's been. "Where were you?" he asks. Jay doesn't answer, and he asks again, louder, reaching with his good arm and throwing an empty water bottle toward Jay's side of the room. Jay startles, lifting his head slightly before dropping it down again. "I'm sleeping, man." "Shelby?" Colin asks. "Nah, she's such a scene queen, not to mention insane." Colin rolls his eyes and adds a snort so Jay hears his scorn even if he can't see it. All the girls Jay dates are insane. "How's Joe?" "His leg's pretty cut up," Colin says, scrubbing his face. "But otherwise he seemed okay when I left." "He's like 7,000 years old," Jay says. "And nothing keeps Joe down. Not even his whole fucking porch collapsing with him on it." "He's 72, Colin grumbles. "And he's lucky. Half an inch to the left, and he could have bled to death." Jay answers this with the appropriate weight of silence. Sometimes, when the planets align, even he realizes when a smart-ass comment is unnecessary. "Oh," he says with more enthusiasm, "I saw your girl." "What?" "Lucy. I saw her on my way here. She was sitting in front of Ethan Hall. I asked her if she needed help, but she said no." "First of all, she's not my girl." Jay groans into his pillow. "Trust me," Colin counters, opening his eyes to stare at the ceiling, wide awake now. Scattered above him are glow-in-the-dark stars and a model of the solar system. His dad made it for him before he died, and it's followed Colin to every bedroom he's ever had. He sighs, rubbing his hands over his face again and wondering who this strange girl is and why in the hell she was sitting outside alone at 4 a.m. "She told me to leave her alone." "Christ," Jay groans. "It's like you know nothing about women. They all say shit like that, Col. They have to. It's like hardwired into their brains or something. They say that stuff to feel less guilty about wanting us to jump their bones. I thought everybody knew that." "That's the kind of reasoning that will earn you a cellmate ironically named Tiny," Colin says. "If I'm wrong, then why did I get laid last night and you were here with a pile of laundry in your hand?" "I think that has less to do with me and more to do with the poor choices being made by the female students at St. O's." "Ah, right," Jay says thickly, already half asleep. He falls silent, and eventually his breaths even out. Inside, Colin is a tornado, unable to stop thinking about Lucy and why she might be sitting outside in the cold. On that first day, she said she was here for him, and although he doesn't understand what that means, maybe part of him does. Clearly, she looks different to Colin than she does to Jay, and it's hard to pretend that doesn't mean something. In fact, he's trying his best to ignore the caveman asshole feeling he gets when he thinks that she's somehow his, but she's the one who put it out there, planting the idea like a tiny dark seed inside him. And now he can't sleep. Great. Careful not to wake Jay, he grabs 2 hoodies and slips out of the room. Lucy is exactly where Jay said she was, sitting on a bench in front of Ethan Hall with her back to Colin, facing the pond. In the low light, the water looks strangely inviting, smooth and dark and calm enough to make the moon and thousands of stars come see their reflections. Mist curls along the edges, like fingers luring its victims into the frigid blackness. With a deep breath, he closes the distance between them. "Hey," she says, without turning to see him. "Hey." Finally, she peeks at him out of the corner of her eye. "What are you doing up?" she asks. Her voice is always so raspy, like she doesn't use it much. "Couldn't sleep. What about you?" As expected, she doesn't answer, so he places the sweatshirt on the bench next to her. Jay said he saw you out here. I thought you might be cold. She's still wearing the plain blue Oxford, and no way is it warm enough.
Is that why you came out here?
Maybe. He rubs his hands together, blowing into them, and glances over at her.
How is Mr. Velasquez?
Colin wants to burst out in song. He's so happy she's speaking to him. He's going to be okay. By the time I left, he was back to his old self, insisting he could work from bed if Maggie would let him. I'm pretty sure Dot will be in the infirmary forcing food on him every 20 minutes. Lucy stares at the pond for several beats, and Colin wonders if they've gone back to the silent game, until she says,
Dot is your boss, right? You seem close to her.
She is my boss. He smiles at her tentative efforts at making conversation. But she's always been kind of like a grandmother to me.
So your kind of grandmother runs the kitchen, and the headmaster is your godfather?
Godfather, Colin says in his best Brando, but Lucy only gives him an indulgent, tiny dimpled smile. My parents died when I was little. They were teachers here and were close to Dot and Joe, who was a history teacher at the time. Dot hired me in the kitchen when I was 14, but she's been feeding me since I was 5. I try and hang out with her as much as I can, like help her out on baking nights and stuff.
I'm sorry your parents died.
He nods once. His stomach tightens, and he hopes they can move on from this topic. He doesn't want to think about his mother's spiral into psychosis, or the accident, or any of it. Almost everyone here knows the story, and he's grateful he never really has to tell it.
And you've lived here since you were 5?
We moved from New Hampshire when my parents got jobs here. They died when I was 6, and I lived with Joe until I moved to the dorms freshman year. He bends so he can see her face more clearly. What about you? Does your family live in town? I thought you were a commuter, but... He trails off, and her silence rings back to him.
Colin,
she says finally. Hearing her say his name does things to him. It gets him thinking of ways to make her say it again, and louder. She looks up at him.
About what I said yesterday.
You mean the part where you asked me to stay away, and here I am finding you in the middle of the night?
No, not that.
She sighs, tilting her head up to stare at the sky.
I'm glad you're here.
Well, that's the complete opposite of what he'd expected. This girl is about as hard to read as acrylic text. Okay. The amount of attention she's giving the stars makes him wonder if she's trying to count them. Does she see something there that he can't?
I shouldn't have said what I said yesterday. I want you around me. It's just that I don't think you should want to be around me.
She takes a deep breath, like she's readying herself for a hard admission.
And now I sound crazy.
He laughs. She totally does. A little.
But I guess what I'm going to say is kind of crazy.
He stares at her, focusing on the way her teeth rake across her bottom lip. He already knows there's something different about her, and there's most definitely something strange about them. It's not until he's here, in this moment, that he realizes how much he's resisted thinking about how weird everything has been. After his mother's breakdown and the resulting death of both of his parents, he'd learned how to guard his mind so carefully, never lingering too long on his morbid history or, eventually, anything even mildly worrisome. The idea that there might really be something strange about St. O's always struck Colin as legend, a way to make new kids behave, to lure the thin stream of tourists to the town nearby in the summer. but there's something paradoxical about sitting with an odd stranger at night next to a foggy pond that makes you see things more clearly. Even so, his body fights the clarity. Colin can feel his thoughts clouding, letting go, as if he's supposed to not care how strange it seems. This time, he pushes back, listening instead to the rational side of his brain and sliding away from her the tiniest bit. He's always known Lucy wasn't a normal girl. Her hair is blonde to him, not brown. She never seems cold. She never seems to eat. She's so different. And when her eyes meet his, and they are a slow, grinding, anxious gray, filled with metal and ice, worry and hope, and wholly unlike anything Colin has ever imagined before, he wonders for a flash if Lucy is even real.
Chapter 7. Her. Her throat is tight, almost as if invisible hands strangle down the words inside her. But it isn't some strange supernatural force urging her to keep her death a secret. It's fear, plain and simple. Her murder, the blood and death and unanswered screams, is the sharpest memory of her life. She has no idea how much time has passed since she died, or whether anyone in this town was alive when it happened. A boy she kissed? A favorite teacher? Her parents? But after the week of wandering the grounds, of not knowing her name or who bought her the shoes on her feet, of feeling a rising panic stirred up by the sheer emptiness inside, knowing something about her life, even that it's over, was a bittersweet relief. But whereas human rules are always so straightforward, priority number 1, stay alive, rules after death are a complete mystery. Was she somehow responsible for what happened to Joe? It feels that way. Worry fills her hollow chest with an icy chill at the thought that she could hurt someone without meaning to. Now one thing is for sure. The only thing keeping her from being completely alone in this world is the nervous boy sitting next to her, and she does have a story to tell. It might be short and unreal and full of holes, but she can't keep it from him much longer. The question is whether he'll want to have anything to do with her once he hears. "Lucy?" Colin asks, ducking to reclaim eye contact. "I didn't mean to make you feel like you have to talk. You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to." "No, I'm putting the words together." She smiles weakly at him. Swallowing down her apprehension, she begins, "I woke up by the lake a few weeks ago." She points behind them, over her shoulder. "The day I saw you, I'd only just stumbled off the trail." His first reaction is silence, and it reverberates dully between them. She chances a look at his profile. He's squinting as if translating the words in his head. "Sorry, I don't know what you mean," he says finally. "You fell asleep out there? In the woods?" "I appeared there," she says. "I don't know if I fell from the sky or materialized out of thin air, or if I'd been sleeping there for 100 years or a day. I woke up with no memories, no belongings, nothing." "Really?" he asks, his voice high-pitched and shaky. He meets her eyes then, studying. She sees his expression cloud with something. Anxiety, maybe fear. "Please don't be scared," she whispers. "I'm not going to hurt you. At least I don't think I am." She slips her hands into her lap as if they might be capable of something she hasn't yet discovered. He shifts back, his angular jaw clenched tight, and it's clear in his expression the thought hadn't occurred to him until she'd said it. She shakes her head. "Sorry, I'm not doing a good job explaining. See, I think I know why I don't remember anything, and why it's hard to pick things up, and why I don't need food or sleep or your sweatshirt." She looks up at him, waiting for him to say something, but he doesn't. Licking her lips, her eyes pulsing with anxiety, she says, "I'm pretty sure I'm dead."
Chapter 8. Him. Colin stares at her, part confused, part horrified. "Okay," he says, eyebrows slowly rising. Half of his mouth tilts in an unsure smile. This can't be happening. It can't. "Dead, huh?" He blinks, pressing his hands to his eyes. He's officially lost his mind. "Yeah." She stands and walks a few steps toward the pond. Colin watches her as she gazes at her reflection and wonders if a dead girl would even have one. "So, when you said you're here for me, you mean you came back from the dead for me?" He can see her nod, even though she faces away from him. "That's what I mean." Dread, heavy and cold, settles between his ribs. "No, please, no. But if you're dead, how can you open doors or—" He points to the sweatshirt in her arms. "Hold my hoodie or even wear the school uniform." She shrugs. "I don't know. I'm pretty sure I look the same, still tall and knobby, but I'm less clumsy." She looks over her shoulder and smiles at him sadly, then turns away again. "But I think I feel different. Less solid, less—" She trails off, shaking her head. "Just less. I remember dying, but I'm here. That's all I can tell you." Her long, white blonde hair reaches the bottom hem of her blue shirt, and she looks so eerily beautiful in front of the pond with the perfectly sliced half-moon directly overhead. Suddenly, the idea that he's losing his mind doesn't seem so impossible. Colin wonders if Lucy is even really here. "Lucy, what color is your hair?" She turns, a confused smile on her face. "Brown?" With this, he drops his head into his hands and groans. Lucy walks over, sitting beside him on the bench. "Why did you ask me that?" "It's nothing." She reaches out and takes his hand, but he immediately drops it, shooting up from the bench and wiping his palms on his thighs. "What the hell?" His hand tingles where it touched hers, the sensation slowly fading into buzzing warmth. She feels like static, like charged particles in the shape of a girl. Colin stares at her and then puffs his cheeks out as he exhales. "What is going on?" he murmurs, looking beyond her and up at the sky. He's suddenly remembering every burnout kid that's come back from the woods with the story about something they saw, how his mom used to talk about. God, he can't start thinking about that. The idea that Lucy is a walker is impossible. The idea that walkers are real is even more impossible. But either scenario makes him nearly choke with panic, because if walkers aren't real, then he is insane. And if they are real, then maybe his mother wasn't crazy after all. And right now, in every other way, he feels sane. He does. He remembered to grab a jacket before he came outside. He's wearing shoes. He thinks he's speaking coherently. When he looks around, he doesn't see anything amiss, no spiders crawling up his body or stars weaving in the sky. Just a brown-haired girl who looks blonde to him, says she's a ghost, and feels like static heat. That's it. He's insane. Why didn't I think about it more? Think about what? He waves a hand, blindly indicating the area around her head. Your hair is blonde, and Jay says it's brown. And your eyes? Oh, God, what is going on? My eyes? My hair? Lucy bends to catch his gaze. I look different to you? He shrugs stiffly. It feels like there is a stampede of horses galloping in his chest. I look different to you, and it didn't freak you out before? Not until now. He groans. I guess I didn't want to think about it. I don't ever want to think about it. Think about what? Nothing. Forget it. He shoves his hands into his hair, pulls. What did my hand feel like? She asks, more insistent now. Like... He shakes his head, trying to find the right words. Energy and buzzing. She offers her hand again. After staring at it for what feels like an eternity, he steps forward, breathing heavily, and takes it. In his grip, her touch snaps against his skin before settling into a warm, vibrant hum. His voice shakes when he says, like energy and air? The hum begins to fill him with a longing so intense he feels disoriented. He releases it again and steps back, shaking both hands at his sides like he's flicking away water. It's crazy, Lucy. This is crazy. She steps toward him, but he takes another step back, needing space to breathe. He feels like the air is being sucked from his lungs when she's so close. As if reading his mind, she pulls her hands into the sleeves of her shirt. But after a long moment, curiosity takes over. Reaching forward, he tugs at her sleeve, pulling her hand out and toward him. His fingertips run over her palm before he turns her hand and presses it to his. Snapping, crackling energy followed by a delicious warmth and the relief of a strange, deep ache. The shape of her is obvious, but he can't close his hand over hers. When he presses too hard, her energy almost seems to repel his touch. Is it really his mind doing this? Wild, he breathes. She seems to pull back, as if his touch borders on painful for her. Are you okay? Yeah, she says. It's a lot to take. Your skin feels hot and so... alive? It's a little overwhelming for me. Colin winces, looking away as he drops her hand and mumbles an apology. It's like I didn't exist, and then suddenly I was there on the trail, she says, explaining. And that dress I was wearing? The thin, flowery one? The little girl's sandals? She grows quiet, and he looks up at her, waiting. I think that's what I was buried in. She's afraid, he realizes. Her eyes are this rich, grinding violet, flecked with metallic red. Hope and fear, he thinks, but mostly fear. Colin squeezes his eyes shut. He can read her mood in her eyes. Colin, are you okay? He presses the heel of his palms against his brows and grunts. Not a yes, not a no. He is most definitely not okay. She steps closer. After I saw you, I felt like I was supposed to find you. And I realize how that sounds. It sounds creepy. It's why I ran away. I almost went after you, he mumbles, but immediately wishes he hadn't. This conversation feels the same as barreling headlong into a sharp turn in the dark on a new trail. He doesn't know how to navigate it. After that first day, I felt drawn to the school. I would sit outside and... Out of the corner of his eye, he sees her look up at him. You know when you hold your breath and everything gets tight and full, and you wonder what's causing your chest to burn? It's only oxygen and carbon dioxide not being let in and out of your lungs. But it burns, you know? His eyes widen, and he nods, barely. He knows exactly what she means. seeing you was like being able to exhale and then inhale again. She searches his expression. I know it sounds lame, but when I'm with you, even though nothing else makes sense, I'm glad I'm back. She's said too much, and Colin doesn't know how to tell her that it's impossible she's dead, and this entire conversation is a figment of his imagination. But then again, if this is all in his head, should he even feel embarrassed for her that what she says can't possibly be true? How does one fight the spiral into insanity? His mother certainly didn't. Rather, she fell into a depression so deep after his sister died that she wouldn't eat or move for days at a time. Finally, she insisted she saw her dead daughter walking around campus, lost her mind, and drove the living members of her family off a bridge. He stares at her, feeling as if he's about to throw up. Her eyes are liquid metal infused with color. Her hair is white blonde only to him. She tells him she's returned from the grave, that she's here for him. I need... This sounds insane. You think I'm insane? I'm sorry. I have to. Please, Colin, believe me. I would never... He stands as she's mid-sentence, turning woodenly and walking as fast as he can back to the dorm.
Chapter 9. Her. She watches Colin walk away and can almost feel the frenzy of his reaction. The air seems to cool with every step he puts between them, but the imprint of his palm burns against hers. The conversation went both better and much worse than she expected. Better because she was actually able to explain. Worse because he left the way he did, looking as if he thought she was making it all up. Standing, Lucy wraps herself in Colin's hoodie. She closes her eyes as she takes in his scent on the cotton. What else can she do but wait? She can't blame him for his panic and for the fear she saw so plainly on his face. The only way she can earn his trust is to let him see that all she wants is to be near him. She has time. She may even have forever. With one final look, she begins the long walk back to her shed. She sits by the statue of Saint Ozana the next morning with her arms wrapped around her legs, pulled tight to her chest. She's grown used to the statue's strangeness. It's the only thing that feels as out of place in this living world as she does. The earliest risers shuffle past in the chilly air, talking, laughing, eating, barely awake or focused. One with bright, flushed cheeks, one with wild red hair, and one with smooth, ebony skin. Despite this, Lucy is struck by how little there is to differentiate them. The space around each student feels dull and hollow. Lucy thinks Colin must hate this weather, so drizzly and wet. Would he ride in this? Hopping his bike from log to log, defying gravity on such simple engineering even in the rain. She wants to watch him like that, lost in something he loves. Just as the sun finally reaches the tops of the buildings, Colin appears. He steps around the corner, headed to work the morning shift in Ethan Hall. Long legs, long strides, wild hair still too long. He pushes it off his brow and glances at his watch before starting to jog. Lucy ducks back into the shadows, pulling the hood of his hoodie up and over her head. Unlike every other student at St. Ozana's, the space near Colin seems so full. The air is heavy with him. It distorts as if heated, swirling inward, wanting to be as close to him as she does. "Good morning," she says into the cold, hoping it will pass along the message.
Chapter 10. Him. Have I told you lately how awesome you are, Dot? Jay asks, his mouth full and his second plate of French toast in front of him. They're sitting at the secret table in the kitchen, watching Dot and the other cooks prepare breakfast for hundreds of students about to pour in through the doors. Back here, they can eat in peace and steal extra bacon. But this morning, Colin picks at his breakfast. "If I'm so awesome, then why do I always have to take your dishes to the sink?" she asks over her shoulder. Jay immediately changes the subject. "You going out after work?" Dot steps up behind Colin, setting a carton of orange juice on the table before turning back to the giant range and flipping about 17 pieces of French toast in 10 seconds. "Yep, I'm going to the poker tournament in Spokane. I pulled a royal flush right out of the gate last time. First deal of the night." She smiles and does a little dance as she begins slicing oranges. "Dot, I'm not sure I like you driving all the way down there," Jay says. "Oh, please," she scoffs. "My eyesight is better than yours, kid. I've seen some of the girls you date." She makes exaggerated air quotes around the word date. "You wouldn't rather hang out with us than a bunch of old ladies? I'm hurt, Dot. If I were 10 years older..." Jay trails off, wiggling his eyebrows at her. "Jay, you are so creepy." Colin doesn't need any help feeling nauseous this morning. He got 0 sleep. He barely wants to look up for fear of seeing something new that confirms he's lost his mind. He's a disaster. Dot fills Jay's plate again and wipes her hands on her "don't fry bacon naked" apron. "You know I'd go nuts if I never got away from this place." Everyone grows silent, and Colin can feel them both watching him, waiting for his reaction to Dot's casual words. Colin, the orphan who has no idea what comes next and will probably never leave this tiny town. To change the subject, he asks the first thing that comes to mind, "Dot, you ever see a walker?" and immediately regrets it. She stops slicing, knife hovering in the air. Colin can hear the rhythm of footsteps through the kitchen wall as students stomp their way into the dining hall. Finally, she shrugs. "I sure hope not, but sometimes I'm not so sure." It takes a few seconds for her words to make it from Colin's ears to the part of his brain that makes sense of them. "You think they exist, though?" She turns and points the spatula at him. "Is this about your mom again? You know I loved her like a daughter." Jay grows silent, his interest in his French toast suddenly renewed. He knows practically everything there is to know about Colin. He definitely knows the story surrounding how his family died, and more than that, he knows how much Colin hates to talk about it. "I just want to know," Colin mumbles. Turning back around, she flips more French toast in lingering silence before saying, "Sometimes I think they're with us, and maybe we don't want to see." Jay laughs as if Dot is joking, but Colin doesn't. "I'm a crazy old lady about most things, but I think I'm right about this." "What do you mean?" Colin begins tearing the edge of a campus newspaper into narrow strips, trying to look like this is just casual conversation, like he's not hanging on her every word. "You believe the stories?" "I don't know. We've all heard about the army man on the bench and the girl disappearing in the woods." She squints, considering. "Newspapers love to talk about how this place is different. Built on land where kids were buried. The fire that first week the school opened. We all know people have seen things, and more than a few. Some a bit clearer than others," she adds quietly. "Who even knows what's real anymore?" Colin pokes at his food. "So you think they're all over then? Ghosts and spirits and stuff? Not only here at St. O's?" "Maybe not all over, but I bet there's always a few around. Least that's what people say." Colin wonders if he's imagining the way she looks out the window, off into the direction of the lake. "If you haven't seen them, how do you know?" Jay asks, joining in. "Some of the stuff I've heard, it's pretty crazy. You'd have to be He stops, glancing quickly in Colin's direction before stuffing his mouth full of French toast again. "If you think this world isn't full of things you don't understand, Jay, you're too dumb to use a fork unsupervised." Dot's quiet laugh softens her words. Colin feels sort of wobbly all of a sudden, like his insides have liquefied. He's not sure which scenario would be worse, that he's lost his mind, or that the stories he's dismissed his entire life could be true. That Lucy could be dead. "Why are they here, do you think?" he asks, quieter now. She pauses, looking over her shoulder and raising an eyebrow. "You're taking this pretty seriously, kiddo." Turning back, she doesn't answer right away and begins chopping a large pile of dried cranberries. The sharp, fresh scent fills the space. "Who knows? Maybe to watch over us," she says, shrugging a shoulder. "Or to meet us so that we'll know someone when we're gone." She drops the entire pile into the mixer. "Or maybe they're just stuck here. Maybe they need closure." "Closure like they want revenge?" Colin asks. "Well, if they're bad, I reckon it's pretty easy to tell. I've always figured anyone from the other side is undiluted, good or bad. Life is all gray. Dying has to be pretty black or white." She pulls the dough out and begins forming rolls as Colin watches, just as he has hundreds of mornings in his lifetime. Somehow every movement she makes feels more substantial, like he never noticed how much her experience weighs until now. "Thanks, Dot." "For what? Waxing poetic about dead folks?" "I mean, when you're not talking about the hot barista at the coffee shop or the benefits of pineapple for your sex life, you're all right." "I try." She points to the cabinet above the counter. "Grab my baking sheets." Even after the familiar routine of helping Dot bake, Colin doesn't feel much better. If anything, he feels worse. He can count on one hand the number of times in the past 10 years he's felt this mopey, but the things Dot said were the same kind of things he's heard his whole life. Vague slogans about the afterlife and how walkers probably exist, and maybe his mother wasn't insane. It's the kind of reassurance that's easy to give because, ultimately, it doesn't matter anymore whether she was. She's gone. She's gone, and his father is gone, and his sister Caroline has been gone even longer. Now Colin might be losing it too. It's the first time since his parents died that Colin is faced so badly with the knowledge that he's completely alone in this world. No matter how much they care, Dot and Joe and Jay can't help him with this one. Dot finds him sitting on the back step, drawing in the lacy ground frost with a long stick in his good hand. She opens the door, and warm air blows against the back of his neck. "What are you doing out here?" "Thinking." He wipes his face, and she catches it, moving to sit by him. "Are you upset, baby?" "I'm good." "You're not," she says, putting a warm hand on his knee. "Don't lie to me. You're the boy who never stops smiling. It makes it easy to spot when something's off." Colin turns to look at her, and her face softens when she sees his red-rimmed eyes. "I'm losing it, Dot. Like, I seriously wonder if I'm crazy." He hates the way her face falls and how guilty she looks, as if she's responsible for the weight of his tragic life. "You're not. You don't even know why I think that." "I can hazard a guess," she says quietly. "You want to talk about it?" "Not really." He gives her a small smile. "But thanks. I've seen some crazy things in my day, and Lord knows you've got better reasons than the rest of us to have some wrinkles in your sanity. But will it help if I tell you I know for a fact you're as sane as they come?" Colin laughs humorlessly. But how could you know that? Her expression steadies. Because I know. Maybe I'm imagining you saying that. It's okay, Dot. I'm okay. She studies him for a beat before pinching him hard on the arm. He cries out, immediately rubbing the spot. Dot has a pretty mean pinch. What the hell, Dot? See? She says with a quiet laugh. You didn't imagine that. And for someone who's survived things that would have left anyone else in the ground and lives their days like there will never be any more, sure, you sometimes give me good reason to think you're nuts. But if you're crazy, then I'm young and ugly. And we know I'm neither. Colin makes a quick trip to check in on Joe before heading to class, and is relieved to see his godfather sitting up, enjoying an enormous plate of French toast and bacon. Dot delivery? He asks. Joe nods, pointing with his fork to the chair beside the bed. You have time to sit? A couple minutes. Colin sits, and the warm silence fills the space between them. It's their familiar routine, quiet sitting, little conversation. Colin looks out the window, watching students trudge to class, while Joe eats. Sleep good? Joe asks around a bite. I should be asking you that. I slept like the dead, Joe says. Maggie pumped me full of painkillers. Nodding, Colin says, Yeah, you were looped. Who's the girl? Once he processes the question, Colin's heart seems to freeze, and then it explodes into a gallop. Which girl? The one who came to me on the porch. The brown-haired one. Wanted to help, but said she couldn't. She said that? Joe sips his coffee, eyeing Colin. You're going to think I'm losing my mind, kid, but I've got to know. Is she beautiful or horrible? What? Colin moves closer. Looking quickly up at the door to ensure they're alone, Joe whispers, The girl. Is she beautiful or horrible? Colin whispers, Beautiful. I thought. Her face melted right off, and then she became the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. Colin is caught by a head rush so powerful he needs a few seconds before he can answer. It's probably the pain meds, he says, swallowing. They make you see crazy things. No, kiddo, Joe mumbles, eyes trained on Colin. That was before I fell. Colin feels like his entire world has closed in around him. You must be remembering it wrong. Joe doesn't respond, and Colin reluctantly continues. Her name is Lucy. Joe's eyes close, and he shakes his head. Well, I'll be damned. Bile rises, thick in Colin's throat. Joe? Lucy was the name of a girl who was killed here. Ugly time for this place, must be some 10 years ago now. Looks just like her. I'm sure that's why my mind went off. He laughs, taking a bite of orange. Must be the pain meds after all. Colin ducks into a computer lab, leaving the lights off to remain hidden. He remembers the first time he did this, high and drunk with Jay after a bonfire and ghost stories on the edge of the woods, sneaking in to see if any of the gruesome stories could actually be true. There were more hits than he would have imagined for something most people wrote off as folklore. Stories of a place where students seemed to die at a higher rate than any other boarding school in the country. But how many schools have such harsh winters and enormous wild grounds? Colin never understood why it was a surprise that kids died or disappeared more frequently here than other places from things like exposure, pneumonia, and suicide. Even stoned, he didn't believe any of the legends. He has a vague memory of seeing the one Joe mentioned about the girl who died. Most websites have information about the murderer and his subsequent trials and execution. Because the murder happened a decade ago, there are only 2 news stories online from the time of the killing. Colin clicks a link with a photo and covers his mouth with a cupped hand to keep from crying out when he sees her face. Her hair is brown, her features less glass-like, but it's her. Beneath the photo is a story from the Coeur d'Alene Press. Monday's arraignment of accused serial murderer Herb August Miller, who is being held for the killing of 17-year-old Lucia Rain Gray, as well as 7 other teens over the past 8 years, has been continued to June 1st. Prosecutors allege the 42-year-old former headmaster of St. Hosanna's boarding school outside of Coeur d'Alene stalked Lucia for several weeks prior to the murder. The murder of a teen at his school indicates Miller, who previously only selected victims far from his home state, was growing increasingly confident in his ability to evade law enforcement. Miller allegedly invited her to his cabin, drugged her, and took her to the woods, where he slit her throat before cutting open her chest. In what is now believed to be his gruesome trademark, Miller then removed her heart. Police found Miller attempting to bury the body on a trail beside the school after a young boy saw him carrying a struggling girl into the woods. The boy alerted a staff member, who called 911. "This is a killer we've been hunting for 8 years, and who has caused unspeakable heartache to many families across the country. It's possible he would have simply carried on at the school if it hadn't been for the bravery of the young boy in finding help," Coeur d'Alene Sheriff Mo Rockford said at a press conference early Friday. "The capture of Herb Miller is a huge weight off the minds of national law enforcement, and this community owes a debt of gratitude to the boy and the staff for making the prompt call." Miller has been indicted on 7 counts of first-degree murder. The state is seeking the death penalty in light of the gruesome aggravating torture and mutilation factors. 17-year-old Gray was the youngest victim of Miller's killing spree. This isn't the first round of tragedy for the school, which was built on a burial site for settlers moving west, and which lost 2 young children in a fire 2 days after the school opened in 1814. St. Hosanna's has been struck by tragedy regularly over the years, with its proximity to the woods, glacial lakes, and harsh elements resulting in a number of student and visitor deaths. Colin stops, closing the window on the screen before anyone sees what he's reading. "Lucia Rain Gray," he says aloud. He lets his heart take over every sensation in his body, pounding relentlessly in his chest and throat and ears. Lucy was telling the truth. Colin doesn't see her all day. She doesn't show up for history, and she's not outside at lunch. He doesn't find her anywhere on campus, and he grows more frantic as he circles buildings and checks every classroom. He tells himself he'll stop looking after this preliminary search, but gives that up after gym, dressing quickly so he can scout the woods bordering school before 7th period. Days go by, and Jay tells him that she's stopped coming to his English class, too. The desk she sat in that first day stays empty. Colin doesn't understand why that feels like a punch to the stomach. If this situation is as crazy as he keeps telling himself, then why does he even care? Why does he keep rubbing his palm, trying to remember what it felt like to touch her? Why does he want to do it again? He wants to remember. Her skin was warmer than air, but not by much. Her eyes change, like ripples in a pond. She's never cold, even with the strongest wind outside. Except for a pencil on that first day, he's never really seen her touch anything. and even that looked hard, like she had to work at keeping it between her fingers. Her eyes, when she asked about Joe, changed colors as he watched, from deep gray to an aching, honest blue. He considers leaving campus to try and find her, but has no idea where she even goes when she isn't here. Does she vanish into thin air? By Friday night, Colin has the same feeling he gets when he doesn't ride his bike for a long stretch, antsy, and like something is growing inside him and pushing his vital organs into a tiny corner in his chest. He's worried that Lucy is left, but he's even more worried that she's simply evaporated, that she reached out to him, and his rejection somehow sent her away. He takes his bike to the woods, riding the narrow trails along the rickety boards he and Jay propped there years ago. He hops boulders and streams, crashes down hills. He beats himself up until he's bruised and sore. He does everything he can to clear his mind, but nothing works. He eats dinner and tastes nothing. The heat in his dorm room feels claustrophobic, oppressive. Sitting on his bed, he thumbs through a bike magazine before tossing it to the floor and flopping backward, fists to his eyes. Across the room, Jay pauses his repetitive bouncing of a tennis ball against the wall. "Do you have any idea where she is?" "No. The last place I saw her was..." His words fade away as he registers that maybe it doesn't matter where he saw her last. Maybe what matters is where this started for her. "Colin?" "I think I might know. I'll catch you later." Jay glances out the darkening window, concerned, but keeps any objections to himself. "Just be careful, man." Colin takes off down the path toward the park, headed for the strip of chain-link fence that he and Jay busted when they were freshmen, which probably hasn't even been discovered by the groundskeepers. It leads directly to where he thinks Lucy awoke by the lake. The trail is only about a mile long, but he's practically frozen by the time he gets there. Now that he knows at least some of the legends might be true, Colin feels an instinctive shudder of fear as he nears the water. Once the sound of his sneakers on the gravel quiets, it's eerily silent. The idea that Lucy could be sitting out here alone makes his hands shake in a way that has nothing to do with the cold. Or maybe it's because he's afraid she's not here at all. He looks around, hunching forward against the wind. The sky looms heavy and dull overhead, the clouds so thick it's impossible to tell where one stops and the next begins. There's an old dock not far from where the trail ends. It's missing a lot of planks, and the wood that remains is waterlogged and decomposing, but despite this whole area being off-limits, the most daring kids still occasionally horse around on it in the summer. Now, though, it's covered in a light dusting of snow, and for some reason, Colin isn't surprised when he sees Lucy sitting at the end of it, perched on an uneven outcropping of broken and rotting boards. Long blonde strands fall almost to her waist, and the wind lifts them, tangling them in the breeze that whips across the lake. The wood creaks beneath the weight of his careful steps. She's changed her clothes, though her signature boots sit unlaced on the dock just behind her. The hoodie he left for her rests in her lap. Now that he's here, he realizes he spent more time trying to figure out how to find her than how to talk to her. Staring at her back, he files through appropriate openers. He needs to say that he's sorry, that he's a clueless boy who has no idea what to do with a living girl, never mind one who isn't. Maybe he should tell her that he's an orphan and probably needs an anchor as badly as she does. Slowly, he walks toward her. "Lucy?" he says, and hesitates, taking in the scene in front of him. Her skirt is pulled up above her knees, and her skin is pale and perfect in the retreating light, not a scar or a freckle anywhere. "It's not cold," she says, looking down to where her legs dangle in the water below. It has to be 30 degrees out, and the lake has that syrupy look, where the algae is gone and the water looks like it's hovering between liquid and solid. Colin's limbs ache watching the icy water lap against her skin. I mean, intellectually, I know it's cold, she continues, but it doesn't feel that way. I can feel the sensation of the cold water, but the temperature doesn't bother me like it should. Isn't that strange? The wind seems to have stolen his words, and he's not sure how to respond, so instead he reaches out, placing a hand on her shoulder. Her eyes widen at the contact, but she doesn't say anything. I didn't know where you were, he says finally. Are you okay? I'm okay, she whispers. He looks at his hands in amazement. He can feel the weight of her hair as it moves over his fingers, the texture of the skin on her neck, but where there should be warmth, there's only the tingling sensation of movement, a stirring breeze. It's as if whatever is keeping her here, keeping her body upright, her limbs moving forward, is pulsing beneath his fingertips. They stare at each other for a long stretch, and he finally whispers, I'm sorry. A smile twitches at the corners of her lips, dimple poking sweetly into her cheek, before the grin spreads across her face. Her eyes morph from dark to pale yellow in the light of the bright full moon. Don't be. He's not sure how to reply because, whether she needs an apology or not, he feels like a jerk for disappearing that night. Do you want to go for a walk? She asks. He smiles and moves back as she pulls her feet from the water, and he uses the hoodie to dry her legs. They feel like ice against his fingertips. Her eyes drop, and holy shit, he thinks she's looking at his mouth. Suddenly, his head is full of other possibilities. What would it be like to kiss her? Does her skin feel the same everywhere? What does it taste like? When did you do that? She asks, pulling on her boots. He struggles to rein in his thoughts. Reflexively, he licks his lips and realizes she means his piercing. My lip? Yeah. Last summer. She pauses, and it gives him a minute to watch the breeze whip her hair all over the place, like it weighs less than the air. She takes a while to say anything else, though, so he watches her lace up her boots while she thinks. The school doesn't have rules about that? The rules are so old that piercings never made it into the book, but I dare you to try and wear short pantaloons to class. Dot and Joe say I can look like a no-good punk as long as I act like a gentleman. You don't like it? No, I do. It's just... You sound surprised that you do. He laughs, watching her stand. I don't think many boys did that when I was in high school. At least, not boys like you. Boys like me? Nice boys. Burnout boys would be inked and pierced and rowdy. Oh, I'm definitely rowdy. Her lips curve in a half-smile. I don't doubt that. And how do you know I'm nice? Maybe I'm a burnout with a ghost fetish. She gapes at him, surprised, and he wants to grab a rock and crack himself over the head with it. But then she throws her head back and laughs this ridiculous, loud, snorting laugh. Colin exhales a shaky breath. Apparently ghost jokes are okay. She grins up at him. You are nice. I can see it all over your face. You can't hide a thing. He watches her eyes shift from green to silver in the light, and her lips skew into his favorite playful smile. He considers her hair, her eyes, the way she fades into the background for everyone but him. Neither can you. Really? At least not from me. Her smile leaves her lips, but stays in her eyes, even when she blinks away. Good. Something flaps in a cluster of reeds next to the trail, and the last forgotten leaves crunch beneath their shoes as they walk deeper into the woods. Their steps are evenly paced, but Lucy's seem lighter than his, quieter somehow. And now that he's starting to let himself believe, he sees other differences. Her cheeks aren't flushed from the cold. While each of his breaths seems to float like small puffs of smoke in the air in front of him, the space in front of Lucy's lips is noticeably empty. Beside him, she looks around as if she can see every detail in the light of the moon, and it makes him wonder, is she like a cat? Does she have amazing night vision? Although it seems strange that there would be any off-limit topics now that they've both acknowledged that she is dead and he isn't, he feels like it would be strange to ask her what it's like. "So you believe me?" she asks. He considers telling her what Joe said, but opts instead for the simpler answer. "I looked up your story, saw your picture. You were killed by the former headmaster out by this lake." She nods, staring out at the water, and seems largely uninterested in what he's told her. "I wonder why I like being out here then. That's sort of morbid." "Is it weird to not remember everything?" She picks up a leaf and examines it. "I guess. The weird thing is, it's all or nothing, and about the strangest things. I remember with crazy detail a bouquet of flowers my dad bought me for a holiday, but I can't remember his face." Wow. Colin feels lame, but really, what can he say to that? "The other night I was thinking about it. You know those game shows where someone stands in a phone booth and money shoots up from the floor and the person gets to grab as much as they can in a minute?" He has no idea what she's talking about, but goes with it. "Sure." "Well, some of the bills are 20s, maybe a few hundreds, but most of them are ones. So it looks like it's a ton of money blowing around, but it's not. And no matter what you end up with, you're happy because you have money in your hands." She glides around a boulder in the middle of the trail, and he hops on it and then leapfrogs onto a long, rotting log. He can feel her watching him out of the corner of her eye. "Anyway, I feel like at some point after I died, I must have had a minute in a booth with my memories, and I grabbed a couple of 5s, but mostly 1s. So, in other words, you're happy to have something. But what I ended up remembering was pretty useless," she finishes, smiling wryly. "Not enough green to buy much, eh? Like who you were, or why you're here?" She laughs, her eyes glowing with relief. "Exactly." It's the relief that kills him, because he's starting to believe that if one person was supposed to understand her from the start, it was him. "I'm sorry I was a dick." "You weren't a dick," she snorts. God, I forgot how much I love that word used like that. And douche. That one applies too. You were all, "Hey, I died," and I was like, "Wow, that sucks. I got a jet." She laughs again, and this time it's loud enough to echo off the tree trunks around them. He loves hearing it, loves how someone so fine-spun could make such a big sound. Well, how were you supposed to react? Actually, I think I'd have been more worried if you'd been totally calm about it. I would have probably thought, maybe this guy is a burnout with a ghost fetish. It's Colin's turn to laugh, but it quickly fades away. My mom started seeing things. It's how she... He pauses, stopping to face her. See, a few weeks after we moved here, my older sister Caroline was hit by a delivery truck heading into school. She was on her bike. Never saw it coming, I guess. Mom kind of lost it, went off the deep end. Then, after about a month, she started saying she saw Caroline on the road a few times. One night, she got us in the car, told us we were going out for ice cream in town, and then drove the car off a bridge.
Colin,
Lucy whispers, horrified.
that's awful.
My parents died. I survived. So when you told me you thought you were dead, I guess you understand why I flipped out.
God, yeah.
She pulls her hair off her face, exposing every inch of smooth, pale skin. She's so beautiful. He wants to feel his cheek against hers.
I'm so sorry.
He waves her off, hating to linger on this. Where did you go the last few days?
I don't really remember what I did, but I'm sure I was around. Here or in the field. I can't leave campus grounds.
You mean at all? She shakes her head and watches him a minute longer before dropping her leaf on the path. It disappears almost immediately into the mud. It's his turn to stare, watching her profile as she looks out across the water. Lucy? She turns to him with a smile.
I like it when you say my name.
Colin smiles back, but it turns down at the corners after a beat. Do you know why you're back here? She shakes her head.
Are you scared of me?
No. He should be, absolutely, and he wants to say more, to talk about the school and the stories that surround it, about the walkers and how maybe that's what she is, and are they all trapped by the gate? He definitely should be scared, but now that he's with her, close enough to touch, he can feel only relief and that strange, intoxicating longing. Suddenly, walking side by side isn't enough anymore. Hold my hand? He asks. She coils her long fingers around his, both cool and warm, solid but retreating. He can feel points of contact against his skin, but never in the same place for very long. When he squeezes, a current runs through his fingers, making his muscles relax. She's like a constellation, alive against his hand. When he looks up, her eyes are closed, her teeth biting down on her lower lip. What's wrong? He asks. Does this hurt you? Her eyes open, and hunger and joy swirl green and auburn inside. Have you ever been in a pool, and you hop out and jump right into a hot tub? He laughs. He knows exactly the feeling she means. Flushing, hot, and amazing, but also such an intense change it feels like every nerve ending is firing. Yeah, and how it settles into soothing hot instead of that intense, oh my God, yes, hot. She nods. I keep waiting for the settling. Her eyes fall closed again. It never comes. When you're touching me, it's like the first moment of submersion. Always. It's a relief so overwhelming, it almost takes my breath away. Colin's heart beats heavily inside his chest. Tentatively, she reaches up and brushes a trembling finger along the ring in his lip. Did it hurt? A little. The metal must be cold, she whispers, and he feels himself leaning toward her. What does it feel like? For me? Or for you? He asks, grinning.
Chapter 11. Her. For me, she answers, reaching to press a fingertip against the cool metal. Wrap your hand around the pipes, the teacher said. The cold and the warm together feels scorching. Lucy released the pipes with a surprised hiss, looking up at the teacher in shock. Some skin receptors sense cold, some heat. Both are sent to the brain, but the brain hears these mixed signals as powerful heat.
It's a form of perception we call paradoxical warmth. Lucy gasps at the perfect memory and the intensity of the touch, pulling her finger back in surprise. Colin's lip ring was cold from the wind, and his skin was warm with blood, and like the pipes, the feeling of his lip pressed to her fingertip was scorching. And although she understands the science behind the pipes experiment, there can't be any explanation in the world for what happened between them just now. For the brief contact, a few seconds, the air incinerated. Colin swallows, his eyes never leaving her mouth. He blinks a few times. Is he going to kiss her? Her skin warms at the thought, and the closer he leans, the more flooded she becomes with a strange, intoxicating relief. It overwhelms her like a head rush. Lucy knows now that she's been kissed before, even that she's not innocent, but it felt nothing like this. Memories of those monochromatic touches pale next to the vibrancy of Colin's skin, but this reaction turns sour in her thoughts, unsettling her. If the simple touch of his lip on her fingertip felt so intense, what would it feel like to actually kiss him? She's afraid she'd be unable to process so much sensation, and so she turns back to the trail, eyes closed for a moment as she savors the feel of the cold metal ring, the heat of his breath as he exhaled against her fingertip. She's taken a few steps before she hears Colin move to catch up with her. If he's surprised by her reaction, he doesn't show it, and they continue to walk in silence. Every few steps, Colin's hand brushes against hers. Eventually, he gives up pretense and wraps his fingers around hers again, so carefully, just like the first time. He bends to meet her eyes. "Still okay?" he asks adorably, somehow managing to look both confident and completely unsure of himself. She can only nod, overwhelmed by his simple touch. His skin feels hot and alive, as if with each of his heartbeats she can sense the surge of blood in his veins. He smiles widely. "So, if you can't ever leave campus, where do you live?" Lucy takes him to her little home and is impressed when he doesn't look shocked to find her living in an abandoned shed beside the school. She lights the small gas lamp in the corner before stretching out her arms, almost touching the wall on either side. This is home sweet home. He folds his long frame on an old crate, and she sits on another and tells him everything she remembers. The fragmented pieces from her human life are random and meaningless, but he listens like each piece is a part of a larger, greater story. When she starts to tell him everything she remembers since waking on the trail, she sees a shadow flicker on his face for a brief moment, as if he's sad that the story of her first life adds up to so little. But her memories from this life are so numerous in comparison, she treats them like gems. He watches and listens as she leans back against the dilapidated wall of the shed. She tells him about sitting outside the school and watching students in their everyday routine, and how she didn't feel even a single moment of envy. She simply felt as if she was waiting. She tells him that she didn't feel the need to find her parents, even though they might still be alive, and how that lack of compulsion worries her somehow. Wouldn't a girl want to join her peers? Wouldn't she go straight to her family? She brings him up to the present moment with a simple, "I told you I died. You freaked. I wandered around and forced myself to stay away from the school, and then you came and found me. The end." He laughs. "I had no idea you could talk so much. I haven't wanted to talk to anyone else." His smile fades and he looks around like he's seeing the shed for the first time since he arrived. "Don't you want to be in a more comfortable place?" he asks. "It's kind of weird that you're alone out here." "I like it. It feels like mine now, and it's clean and quiet, and no one has ever come over here." He hesitates and then glances down at his phone. "I should go." She watches him brush the leaves and pine needles from his pants. When he looks up, he tilts his head, wincing. "I can't leave you here." "I've been here for almost 3 weeks now." "Come with me. Just tonight." He senses her hesitation and pushes on. "Just until we scare up some blankets and make this whole place less rustic," she offers. "I was going to say creepy. We should aim for rustic." "We." She follows him down the trail, unable even in her weightlessness to match his grace over logs and through the marshy bits.
All of their talking seems to have emptied them of words, and they move through the moonlight in an easy silence until the hulking gray buildings of St. Hosanna's appear above the tips of the trees. The idea of a dorm room, of a comforter, a rug, and walls that keep the elements at bay seems almost decadent. Colin's room screams boy. Muted earth tones, bike magazines, dirty laundry, greasy bolts on his desk, a soda can, a row of trophies. She can see, beneath the layers, strong architectural bones, dark wood window panes, polished hard wood. The shelves built deep into the walls are now cluttered with papers and bike parts and small stacks of photographs. Quite a man lair, she says. Colin flops down on his bed and groans a relaxed, happy noise, but Lucy doesn't want to sit down. She wants to go through his stuff. She has 2 school uniforms, a pair of boots, and a shed. She's fascinated with all of his things. A brown comforter. How understated. She smiles and runs her hand along the edge of his mattress. I like to imagine I'm sleeping in the dirt, he jokes. She feels him watching her while she studies a pile of clothing near the closet door. He throws an arm over his face and mumbles beneath it, Jay and we're not so skilled with the cleaning. Yeah. She pushes aside a pair of socks on a shelf so she can read what books he has stacked there. At least my sheets are clean. He immediately clears his throat, and she continues to stare at his books. Awkward settles like a thick gel into the room. I didn't mean that. Yes, I mean, my sheets are clean, but for sleeping. Oh my God, never mind. Lucy is already laughing. I don't sleep. Right. Won't you get bored? It's nice to be near someone. I promise I won't draw a mustache on you in your sleep. He yawns suddenly, widely. Well, if you do, give me a Fu Manchu. Go big or go home. He stretches as he stands, and a strip of bare stomach is exposed beneath his shirt. Heat pulses through her, and she wonders if it's possible for him to notice the way her entire body seemed to ripple. Hooking a thumb over his shoulder, he says he's going to go brush his teeth. Without Colin's eyes on her, she feels free to look around a little. Not to dig in his drawers or look under his mattress, but to take a closer look at the pictures on his desk, the trophies on his shelves. He's won races and stunt contests. He snowboards, and from the looks of it, he used to play hockey. Ribbons and plaques line 2 shelves, and there are so many she quickly stops trying to read each one. On his desk, there's a picture of a small boy with a man who looks like she imagines Colin will in his 30s. Thick, wild, dark hair and bright eyes. Scattered on his desk are papers and post-its and a few pay stubs from what she assumes is the dining hall. Tucked under his keyboard and sticky with spilled soda is a picture of Colin at a school dance with a short brunette. His hands are on her hips. She's leaning back into him, and they're not just smiling, tight, staged smiles. They're laughing together. A tight ball forms in her chest and expands into her throat. The way his hands rest on her hips is mesmerizing, as if she is firm and his and there. Lucy doesn't know how his touch will ever feel normal to her, and whether she'll ever be able to be close to him the way she imagines this girl was. The skin on the back of her neck burns warm when she feels him return to the room, and she quickly puts the picture back where it was. She thinks he notices, but he doesn't say anything, and neither does she. It's too soon for the conversation of what they are, let alone who that girl was. Even so, Lucy can't quite stop the jealous fire that licks at her insides at the image of Colin with someone else. I realize this is lame, he says, but I'm actually really tired. The clock reads 2 a.m. God, of course you are. Sorry. With a small smile, he climbs under the covers and pats the mattress next to him. Lucy climbs onto the foot of the bed, careful to stay on top of the comforter, and sits cross-legged facing him. You're going to watch me? Until you're asleep, and I can sneak a permanent marker from your desk. He smiles and curls onto his side. Okay. Night, Lucy. Questions pulse in her mind in the blackness of the room, begging for answers. About her, about him, about why the universe sent her back here and why he seems to be the only thing that matters. Night, Colin. Hey there, new girl. Jay grins, pulling out a chair next to his and patting the seat. Colin ignores this, pulling a chair out for Lucy across the table from his friend.
Lucy, J. Her name is Lucy. Lucy's a sweet name, but New Girl is better. It's mysterious. You can be whoever you want to be.
Leaning forward, Jay gives Lucy his best smoldering smile.
Who do you want to be, New Girl?
Lucy shrugs, thinking. She's never considered this aspect of being new and untethered and unknown. Everything she's done has been on instinct. She looks through the open doorway to the dining hall where most students eat. All of the girls bleed together into a single boring uniform. I play bass in an all-female band called the Raging Hussies, have a math fetish, and open beer bottles with my teeth. She grins at him. One of those is true. Jay's eyes narrow.
Please tell me it's the band one. My vote is teeth,
Colin says. Sorry, she says with mock sympathy. Math. Jay shrugs, taking a bite of bacon.
That's also hot. I mean, whether or not you play the bass with a bunch of hussies, you like the lake. That makes you interesting.
What's interesting about liking the lake? Lucy turns and searches Colin's face for explanation, as if trying to decipher if he's told Jay her secret. What's not to like about it?
I love the lake,
Colin says with an easy smile, apparently enjoying the interaction.
Tons of bike trails and no one else ever goes out there.
With a wink, he adds,
I'm not afraid of what's out at the lake. I don't care about the stories,
Jay says.
It just looks creepy. In the summer, it gets so hot and muggy that everything in the air warps. In the winter, the glacial lake freezes and everything turns blue.
Jay spears a fork full of eggs and points them in Lucy's direction.
You've heard about the walkers, right?
Lucy shakes her head, cold spreading from her fingertips up her arm. Instinctively, she shifts closer to Colin.
People say St. O's is haunted, and no one goes to the lake. Some people around here claim they've seen a girl walking around under the water. Hell, this whole place is supposed to be haunted.
Lucy shivers, but only Colin notices. He puts a gentle hand on her thigh below the table.
But if you want to know what I think,
Jay begins, and the eggs fall back onto his plate with a quiet smack.
People don't like walking all the way down there because they're a bunch of lazy asses who'd rather sit in their rooms and open beer bottles with their teeth.
I see, Lucy says. Jay watches her, expression unreadable.
Jay and I aren't scared of ghosts,
Colin says. Jay laughs and shoves his plate away.
No, dude, I don't believe in ghosts.
When Lucy looks over at Colin, he's watching her, grinning with their secret in his eyes. Lucy creates a schedule built of classes with teachers who never take roll. Only one class is with Colin, history, but it's in the middle of the day when she needs to see his reassuring half-smile, his fingers tapping out an impatient rhythm on his desk, the fingers that she knows want to touch her. It's harder than she'd have imagined to be, well, nothing. She watches everyone constantly, wondering if some phrase, some small mannerism will spark a memory or a hint of what she was and how she can stay earthbound and leave the school someday with Colin. She finds herself thinking back on what Jay said about the walkers and the stories that surround the school. She knows she should have asked more questions, should ask them still, but the instinctual tug she feels to be near Colin builds like static in her ears, blocking everything else out. Her questions, her doubts, her purpose seem secondary to the corporeal buzzing she feels beneath her skin in his presence. She's as physically drawn toward Colin as she is repelled by the gate. Lucy? Her head snaps up at the sound of her name, all thoughts of walkers gone. It takes a minute to remember where she is. French class with Madame Barbare, who Lucy doesn't think has ever noticed her before. Like most teachers at St. Hosanna's, Madame Barbare assumes that if you've made it past the security gates and are wearing a uniform, you obviously belong in her class, even if you're not on her roll. Her voice echoes in Lucy's ears, reverberating up into her skull where it bounces around uncomfortably. It's the first time in days someone other than Colin has said her name. Yes? Only when Lucy looks up does the teacher's attention move to her, and Lucy can tell she's called a name whose owner was a mystery to her. I have a slip here telling me to send you to the counselor's office? She phrases it like a question, and it feels like she's asking Lucy to confirm. She stands, painfully aware of the attention of the entire class, and takes the slip. Send Lucy to Miss Proctor's office. Clearly someone has noticed the girl with the stolen uniform. Lucy has seen Miss Proctor in the halls, speaking casually with students or calling out to wild wrestling boys down at the hall. She's young and pretty, and the boys stare at her backside when she walks past. But the woman sitting in the counselor's office isn't Miss Proctor. This woman is short and squat, settled in a chair to the side of the desk, her eyes focused on a stack of papers in front of her. Her blue suit is the color of the springtime sky of Lucy's memory, and it feels incongruous with the dark, shadowed office and the woman's bulky, shapeless form. The woman looks up, watching Lucy walk from the door to the chair. "Hi," she says finally. "I'm Lucy?" "I'm Adelaide Baldwin." The woman's voice is softer and more sultry than her appearance would ever suggest. "Hi," Lucy says again. "I'm the head of counseling services at St. Ozana's." Ms. Baldwin sets some papers on the desk beside her and clasps her hands in her lap. "You've flown under the radar here, it seems." She pauses. When Lucy offers no explanation, she continues. "I like to check in with the faculty every month or two to find out if we have anything different on campus. This morning, Miss Polzweski mentioned that she'd seen a girl around school who she didn't believe was enrolled. We generally like to handle these issues internally before bringing in any authorities." Lucy feels as if a brick has caught in her throat. "Oh," she whispers. "Where are your parents?" Lucy doesn't have an answer. She can feel Ms. Baldwin's eyes on her as she fidgets with a magnetic paperclip bowl on the desk in front of her. It's strange to be alone with someone other than Colin and be the object of such careful scrutiny. "Lucy, look at me." Lucy looks up at the woman, meeting eyes filled with concern. "Oh, honey." Something like hope unfurls inside Lucy when she registers that there are no secrets between them, and that somehow Adelaide Baldwin knows Lucy isn't any ordinary student walking into this office. Lucy plays with the hem of her sleeve, asking, "You know who I am?" She suspects that with this question she has irrevocably shifted the conversation away from something official and related to enrolling her to something unofficial and related to keeping her hidden. "You were a local star heading to Harvard before you were killed." Lucy has to swallow her fear of the answer in order to push the question out. "If you know I died, why aren't you surprised to see me?" Instead of answering, Mrs. Baldwin asks, "When did you come back to St. Ozana's?" "A few weeks ago." Lucy looks past her at the kids leaving the building and walking toward the quad or dorms or dining hall. "I found classes where the teachers don't seem to notice me. Why is that?" she asks. "Why is it that nobody sees me?" "Because they aren't looking. They don't need to see you, Lucy." "Need to see me? I don't understand," Lucy says. Does Colin need to see her? And for what? "So there are others here at the school? Jay said something about walkers?" "That's what some people call them, yes. They walk around the grounds, tied to this place for one reason or another and unable to leave. It's different for each of them." Ms. Baldwin begins placing files and stacks of paperwork back into her bag. Apparently their conversation is over. Panic begins to fill Lucy like a rising tide. "I don't know why I'm here," she says quickly. "Will Ms. Baldwin report her to the authorities she mentioned? Are there some sort of ghost hunters that will send her back? It felt right to come here." "I know." "Do you know why I'm here?" Lucy asks. "No," she says. "You're not the first I've seen in my day." "Where are the others? The walkers? Is that what I am?" Ms. Baldwin doesn't answer, simply gives a little shake of her head. It's as if she's already resigned to the reality that there's nothing to be done about the problem of Lucy. "Can I stay here at St. Ozana's?" The social worker nods. "I don't think we have a choice. Exorcisms don't work. Nothing seems to work. We just have to wait for you to vanish." She blinks away, dropping a pen into her bag and mumbling, "Thankfully, most do." Lucy's chest seizes and she turns to the window, staring out the filmy glass. Vanish? Where would she go? How can she stop it? Miss Baldwin pulls her out of her thoughts.
Do you have money?
Lucy hasn't had a need for it yet, being confined to the campus and lucky enough not to need food or water. No one in the laundry facilities noticed a ghost girl sneaking out boots and socks and old uniforms. No. Miss Baldwin reaches for her bag, pulls out an envelope, and removes several 20s.
I doubt anyone would notice, but I don't want you getting caught taking something. Where are you staying?
Lucy takes the money and curls it into her fist. It feels warm from the purse and scratchy against her skin. In a shed. Miss Baldwin nods again as if this is satisfactory.
Does anyone else know about you?
A boy. The woman laughs and closes her eyes, but it isn't a happy laugh. It's an "of course a boy knows" laugh. A "why did I even bother asking" laugh. Miss Baldwin nods resolutely as she stands.
Take care, honey.
She hitches her purse up and over her round shoulder. Thanks. Adelaide Baldwin faces her and smiles a little before turning to the door. With her hand on the knob, she pauses, facing away so Lucy can't see her expression as she says,
The other kids who are like you? They seem to want to take someone with them. Try not to, Lucy.
Chapter 12. Him.
This girl. She hums tunelessly along with songs she says she doesn't remember. She does the craziest things with her hair and uniform, weaving leaves and ribbons into her long braid. She laughs loudly at his jokes when they walk down the hall together and doesn't seem to care that no one ever notices her. Colin wonders why that is. Jay sees her, a few of the teachers, but that's it. It's as if, for them, her face blends into the background. Plain, generic. But Colin notices everything. And these small details, her simple confidence, flirty smile, and infectious laugh, make it impossible for him to stop obsessing about touching her the way he wants to. She's easy with her affection, a hand on his arm, leaning into his side on a bench. But he's so fascinated with her thoughts and lips and hands. The easy touches make him increasingly hungry, feeling too small in his skin. She asks him to walk her around campus and the woods and tell her about growing up in a small town where the prestigious boarding school employs practically everyone. People assume I had this traumatic childhood, which I guess I did, but it was mostly me being a crazy townie and doing wild tricks wherever I could. There were so many people here taking care of me, it was impossible to ever feel lost or lonely. She smiles up at him, but her eyes are a provocative, sympathetic indigo. He drags his frantic gaze across her face, cataloging every expression. This kind of longing makes him want to roar, to hurl logs and stones, to claim her somehow. So were you always the kid whose parents died? She asks. He laughs at her instinctive recollection of how everyone in this small town has an unofficial title. I think I used to be. Now I'm the kid who jumped 15 feet to flat in the quarry and didn't die. Even Dot heard about that one. Shaking her head, she says, You were crazy to do that. But her eyes have gone metallic brown, swirling. Not you too! Colin, objectively, that was an insane move. It's not insane, he says. It's about fear. Everyone has the same abilities physically. At least they can. The difference is, I'm not afraid to try. Colin can remember that stunt better than almost anything. He pulled his bike to the ledge, took a deep breath, and balanced, eyes focused and muscles taut, before jerking the frame up in a hop over the lip. The bike cut a razor path straight down to the boulder, slicing cleanly through the air. Both wheels glanced off the stone in unison before rolling a rocky path down to the base of the quarry. He landed at the bottom next to it. Body bruised, arm broken.
I met you the next day, he adds. He'd still felt nearly high from the jump, and then she was there, the most gorgeous thing he'd ever seen. This second memory, just as clear. She hums, brushes her fingers against his, and the tickling current travels up his arm before evaporating. He wants more. He practically aches for her touch. It's more than hormones. It's like he's physically drawn into her space, has to force himself to keep any sort of acceptable distance. He pulls away slowly, forming a fist. Wonder what your title was, he says, distracting himself from the sudden urge he has to drag her down on the trail and cover her body with his. The girl with the snorting laugh? She snorts and then smacks his arm as if it were his fault. Maybe. The girl with the wicked eyes? Only to you. Her dimple makes a cameo appearance. Right, he says, laughing. The girl who kicked all the boys' asses in chemistry? She starts to answer, grinning, her jaw already pushed out in pride, but she looks at his hands, formed into tight fists at his hips, and her expression straightens. What's wrong? He shakes out his hands, laughs nervously. Nothing. Are you upset? Colin begins walking again, tilting his head for her to join him. He doesn't know how to do this, how he'll ever do this. He likes her. He wants Lucy to be his girlfriend in every way that matters, including the ways that mean he can touch her. The urge to kiss her is becoming suffocating. Colin? Stopping, he turns back to face her. What? She laughs at his stalling, walking toward him. What's wrong? I like you, he blurts. A lot. His heart clenches and then begins pounding manically, and he half wants to turn and run down the trail. Instead, he stands and watches her expression shift from surprise to elation. Yeah? Yeah, and it's hard to be so close all the time and not touching, he admits quietly. For me too. Stretching onto her tiptoes, she whispers, but I want to try. His tongue slips out, sliding over his piercing. I think about it, she says, her breath smelling like rain and petals. I want to kiss you until you're dizzy with wanting too. It takes Colin 4 tries to get a sound past his lips. You mean you're dizzy with wanting me? She lifts herself up again, and he feels a sensation like lips against his cheek. He turns to her and is met not with her mouth, but with her quickly ducked head. Just before he can step back, a little embarrassed and a lot confused, her hand presses against the front of his shirt. Wait, she says. Just go slow. First with his cheek, then with his nose barely touching her lips. He moves closer, hoping that the way she shakes is from anticipation and not something far less pleasant. She tilts her head just enough for him to brush his mouth over hers, and his fists curl in restraint at his sides. It's different. Her skin there feels different. Still buzzing energy and the sense that if he pressed too hard she would evaporate, but lips nonetheless, full and smiling, and now wet from his. When he comes back again and tastes her, she makes a tiny sound of relief. It's a sound of lust, of air and fire, and Colin nearly loses himself, grasping, fingers digging. But instead, he pulls back, breaths choppy as he looks down at her. Okay, that was a good start. A good start?
she says with a small laugh. My mind is a giant sieve, but I'm pretty sure that was the best first kiss in the history of this town. He gently touches her elbow, carefully urging her to start walking again. The kiss was an enormous step in the right direction, but still only a fraction of what he needed from her. Inside his chest, a rope coils tightly, fraying at the knots. Colin's cast came off 2 days ago, and he doesn't think he's ever been so grateful to be able to wash dishes. He and Dane finished cleaning the kitchen, and Colin lingers around to keep Dot company. She's been quiet tonight. No whistling while she cooks, no smacking them with the spatula. Just thoughtful, quiet Dot, and it weirds him out. Long day? He asks. She shrugs. You know how it is when a storm is on its way. Your barometric knees acting up? She scowls at him over her shoulder. Very funny, smart guy. When she turns back to the sink, he can see her reflection as she looks out the wide window overlooking the back side of the quad. She looks worried. It's sort of like that, she begins, searching for words. Something feels off. I'm not sure what. Colin swallows hard and busies himself by stacking plates. Hey, Dot, do you remember a girl named Lucy Gray? She pauses as she unties her apron. Of course. Everyone around here remembers that name. Yeah. Colin struggles for breath. So, were you on campus when it all happened to her? Why are you asking about something like that? He shrugs, taking a heavy sack of flour from her arms and placing it on the counter. No reason. Some kids were down at the lake, started talking about it at lunch. She pins him with a serious expression. I better not catch you down there. Of course not, he says. It's a lie, and as a general rule, he doesn't lie to Dot. But Colin is always at the lake and figures since it's the same lie he's told over and over throughout his life, it counts as only one. She was killed, Dot says finally, watching as he begins sorting clean silverware. Out of the corner of his eye, he can tell she's got her fist planted on her hip, and he can almost hear the ticking sound as her brain works something out. Do you remember any of it? She finally asks. He points a handful of forks at his chest. Me? She nods. What? No. She was killed when you were 6. He lived on campus and had just lost his parents. He remembers so little about that time, other than the strange, constant desire to dissolve and float away. I don't remember anything about it. She nods and turns back around, bracing her hands and looking back out the window. No, I guess you wouldn't. You had so much going on around then. It was brutal, Col, just... Her head drops, and she shakes it. Just awful. He doesn't want to hear her version of the story, but a sick part of him wants to know everything. Your parents had died, and you were living at Joe's. I don't think you could sleep that night, and Joe was at a meeting with the other dorm heads. You were out on the porch playing alone with your little army men. She turns to look at him and smiles sadly. You saw him carrying a girl into the woods. You ran and found me. It didn't save her, but because of you, this guy was caught. We had no idea that monster was living right alongside us. And he had killed... God, I think he had killed 7 other kids. Colin stands and bolts from the kitchen, feeling his dinner coming back up. Chapter 13. Him. Except for the blurred edge memories of their funeral,
Colin has few solid recollections of his parents or the car crash that left them dead on impact, and Colin strangely unharmed. Their caskets had been positioned side by side at the front of the church, and the smell of lilies was so strong it turned his stomach. His dad's chest had been crushed by the dashboard, and the funeral home was forced to reconstruct it, replacing muscle and bone with metal rods and wax. Colin remembers only an angry purple bruise peeking out from beneath the cuff of his dad's starched white shirt. His mother's arm had been torn from her body by the seatbelt, something he didn't learn about until years later, and the sleeve of her favorite pink dress was just empty, like they thought nobody would even notice. He wondered why anyone would want to see someone they loved like that, skin the wrong color and eyes that would never open again. That's not how he wants to remember. He wants to open his brain, to tear out the ugly pages and replace them with new, happier ones. Ones where moms and dads don't die, and monsters don't carry girls into the woods in the middle of the night. He hadn't felt sick like that again until Lucy. He thought knowing more of her story would be a relief. Another missing piece of the puzzle fit perfectly into place. Instead, knowing he was the last person to see her alive has taken blank pages and inked them with horror and gore. But she's here now, alive or not, standing across the threshold when he opens his door. Her smile makes the other stuff easier to forget, at least for a few hours. It's been 3 days since Dot revealed his role in the events surrounding Lucy's murder. Each night, whenever he started to tell her, his throat felt like it was closing shut. Like always, Lucy pulls off her boots and heads straight for his window, reaching out to push back the curtains. It's been trying to snow all day, and a few small flakes flutter beneath the lamppost to fall slowly to the ground. Even though it's dark out, the sky is bright, practically glowing, and full of clouds that seem lit from behind. No stars tonight. It's a snow sky, Lucy says, her nose pressed to the glass. There's no smudge from where her skin touches the window, no cloud of condensation. My grandma used to say it looks like someone left the TV on in heaven. She laughs, and then pauses, turning to him. How did I remember that? I don't know. Maybe it's like amnesia victims. Certain things trigger specific memories. Yeah, maybe. She turns back to the sky, and he closes his eyes, trying to shut out the pictures that are burned there forever. He wants to tell her more about her death and about his role in it all. But there's something else. A voice inside his head that repeats itself over and over, telling him it's a bad idea. Dot said ghosts come here because they have unfinished business. Maybe that's why Lucy is here. He knows that should mean something to him, a warning to take this more seriously. He doubts anyone would come back from the dead because they lost a library book or missed sitting in school all day. It would have to be big. To settle a score? Revenge? He shakes that off. Lucy would never hurt him. He knows that. But if anyone has unfinished business, it's definitely Lucy. What could be more unfinished than having your heart carved out of your chest by a man your parents trusted to keep you safe? He shivers as Lucy turns to face him. Cold? She asks. Nah, just twitchy. Lucy closes the distance between them, stopping only when the toes of her socks touch the toes of his. He struggles against what feels like every element in his body conspiring to shift him closer to her. He wants to kiss her again. It's so quiet, so hard to believe that there are rooms full of people on the floors both above and below them, on the other sides of these walls. And Lucy is so silent. She doesn't fidget or cough or seem to constantly be adjusting things the way other girls do.
He thinks he can almost hear the snow beginning to fall outside. But in the absence of all those distractions, there's something else, something that hangs in the air between them and makes every single one of his senses somehow supernatural. When she reaches up to touch his bottom lip, tracing along the silver ring, it's as if all the air around them moves with her. He's frantic with what he wants from her. Her eyes melt into deep amber. "Kiss me," she says. "It's okay." He bends to kiss her, barely touching her lips with his. Each kiss is short, careful, punctuated by glances and the quiet murmurings of, "Okay," and her reply, "Yes." If he focuses too hard, he starts to wonder whether he's even touching her. Physically, her kiss is so much less than every kiss he's had before, but inside, he's close to erupting. His hands find her waist, her hips, pull her closer. She shivers, wincing. It's too much. "Shit, sorry," he says. But she tugs on his shirt and gives him a look of such determination that he bends, laughing a little, and just barely kisses her mouth. He doesn't want to be that guy, the one who pushes for more and more and more because he knows every touch overwhelms her, but he's dying to know how her skin feels, to see how her hips fit against his. He feels greedy. "I want you to stay." His eyes hover on her mouth before nervously meeting her gaze. "Can I?" she asks. "Is Jay gone for the night?" "I think so." She lies back on his bed, and he bends over her, tracing an invisible line from her throat past her collarbone before unbuttoning the top 3 buttons of her shirt. No scar is visible on her skin. No heart beats beneath his fingertips, but something else seems to hum in its place. Her short kisses melt like sugar against his tongue, and like a gust of wind, she rolls him to his back. He feels the weight of her over his thighs, how her shape pushes against his. Warm, but also somehow not. It's the most beautiful torture, the shadow of sensation, gone before he even has a chance to process it. It's like he's dreaming. All of the imagery, no actual relief from the way he aches for her. "Colin?" "Yeah?" "Take off your shirt." He stares at her, seeing no trace of hesitation, and reaches behind his head. His shirt is gone in an instant. Her hands and the illusion of her weight press down on his chest. A teasing sensation brings goosebumps to his skin. But every feeling is gone too fast as he sits beneath her, hesitant to touch for fear of flooding her with too much at once. She whispers, pressing words against his neck, his ears, his jaw. "I like the taste of your skin. You smell like soap and grass and the ocean." Her teeth tease at biting, pulling on the ring in his lip. Her hands are everywhere. His own hands grow desperate then, pulling her shirt from her shoulders, touching her stomach, her chest, grasping and wanting to memorize every curve. "Too rough," she says, gasping. He's afraid she's trying to hide that he's hurt her. Sorry, he says, pushing his hands into his hair. He closes his eyes and pulls, grateful for the solid shape of this known sensation. He hasn't ridden his bike in days, hasn't run, hasn't done anything, and he suddenly feels like a bear trying to carry a crystal. His muscles are going to burst from his skin and take off with this tension. He wonders if this is what people mean when they say almost having something is worse than never having it at all. Her palm moves along his cheek, vibrating. "Look at me." He looks up into eyes the colors of blood and night and sky, deep reds and blues, streaking indigo. "You should touch yourself if—" She doesn't even blink, doesn't do a single one of those timid girl things, like fiddling with her hair or covering her face. She just waits, watching. "You mean—" He can feel his eyebrows crawling to his hairline. "Myself?" "Yeah." And then she smiles. It's the sweet, dimpled smile that does him in, the way she seems both vulnerable and demanding. It makes the absurdity of it, the ingrained need for covertness, disappear. He does what she asks, roughly shoving his pants down his hips and closing his eyes only when she whispers his name. It's quick and familiar, and heat rolls along his skin as he tries to catch his breath. But it wasn't really what he wanted. She's watching him, her turbulent eyes never leaving his body. And although they blaze with fascination, he can tell it's not what she wanted either. Colin urges her down into the blankets with him, curling to the side and pulling her back to his front. Her weight shifts between heavy and nothing, pressing and retreating like wind against a pane of glass. They say good night, and then again, unwilling to let go. She breathes, he realizes. Her short breaths match the rhythm of his own, and he settles into the comforting pattern. A bittersweet ache pulses deep in his chest, and as sleep begins to drag him under, he can't fight the fear that the more he needs her, the more impossible it will be for her to stay. His eyes grow heavy, his muscles grow lax, and he feels himself slip away. Colin dreams of Lucy in her flower dress and white sandals, her hands clasped on her stomach, and lilies all around her.
Chapter 14. Her. She's trying to stay perfectly still as he falls asleep, listening to the pattern of his breathing. Colin hasn't biked in days, hasn't beaten himself up and worn himself out like he used to. Lucy is used to seeing him always moving, almost vibrating with his barely contained vitality. But now, as he approaches sleep, he seems oddly quiet. It gives her the tiniest twinge of unease, even as his arms are tight and strong and his broad chest presses to the curve of her spine. Colin inhales and mumbles something before his body seems to deflate, growing easy and tired and even warmer somehow. She misses that release, the physical letting go of sleep. Lucy has been back here for more than 2 months, 65 sunsets, and tonight is the first time she feels the sensation of drifting to darkness. She assumes people who love to sleep mean that they love this part of it most, the peaceful disengagement. As she relaxes, she feels like she's back on the trail, but this time it's only in her mind, and it's different somehow. She's underwater. Bubbles rise from her lips as she exhales, and when she looks up, they turn into silvery stars in a violet sky. Reeds become branches, stretching to touch each tiny spot of light. Ahead of her is the same dusty trail, but in the darkness it is a soft brown-black. The surface seems covered in a strange mixture of the lake bottom and tree bark from the earth outside. The trail doesn't go on forever, as trails sometimes do in dreams. It ends straight ahead, where there is no turn or hill. There is only nothing, a soft blackness. In this world, where ghost girls can walk and touch and laugh, black isn't a terrifying chasm. It's just the other side of white. She keeps walking until she's not walking anymore. She's simply moving, turning left, then right, then left again until she's back at her trail, waiting. Instinctively, she feels her body curve and press back against Colin one more time, just before she lets herself fall into the black.
Chapter 15. Him. He's never stayed overnight at a girl's place, so maybe there's a strange sense of intruding that he hasn't yet experienced. But Colin has had girls sneak in and sleep over, and never in any of those nights did they ever up and leave while he slept. Lucy is gone when he wakes up, and even though it's probably because she was bored to tears, he still feels a little ditched. From his window, he can see that it snowed sometime during the night. A lot. The sky is heavy and gray, and it's almost impossible to tell where it ends and the ground begins. He groans when he sees Dot's garden. He broke his arm the day before he was supposed to clean it out. There are still a few pumpkins scattered around, and the tomato plants are brown and brittle, nearly bowed to the ground beneath the bulk of the snow. Their forgotten fruit stands out in gruesome contrast to the frost-covered vines, like little shriveled hearts draped over a blanket of white. He goes downstairs to help shovel and salt the walks behind the kitchens, wondering the entire time if Lucy went back to her shed. He has no idea how someone so slight walks in the thick, wet snow. He tries not to think about her stuck somewhere, locked in a step that went too deep, unable to pull her weight out of the drift. For about the millionth time, he wishes he understood what the hell she is. By now, he's sweating, but his fingers feel like ice. The very thing he's been avoiding, the fear that Lucy could be gone as quickly as she came into his life, presses in on him. "Hey, stranger," Dot says. "Hey," he answers absently. "You okay this morning, hon?" she asks, as he stomps the snow from his boots. She's buried in one of the lower cabinets, digging out a couple of large stock pots. "Sure." Inside the kitchen, Colin opens cupboard doors and closes them again. He feels like he's shorted out somehow, and nervous energy courses through his limbs. He's not scheduled to work today, but somehow being surrounded by the hustle of morning chaos and grumbling employees is more comforting than the silence of his room. "You seem a little anxious." "I'm fine." She eyes him skeptically. Turning away, he starts putting bread into the huge industrial toaster. "Just wondering if I should put out some more salt." He motions out the window, where white blankets the grass and walkways, drapes every shrub and tree. "Let the groundskeepers do that stuff." Dot steps up behind him and pats his shoulder to soften her words. "You're a sweet kid, you know that?" she says, attempting to smooth his hair. "And you're so much calmer lately. Haven't seen you in the infirmary in more than a month." Har, har. He sits, takes a bite out of his toast. He hadn't realized it had been that long. "So either your bike, skateboard, and kayak are all broken, or you found a new girl." She hovers for a moment before stepping away, but Colin doesn't bother answering. Now that she knows the truth, he wonders how Dot would react if she saw him with Lucy. As she continues her morning routine, he listens to the familiar squeak of her shoes on the tile floors and pushes his food around the plate. If he didn't have breakfast, Dot would bring in the cavalry, but each bite feels like hardened glue settling in his gut. The minute he's done, thoughts of doing anything but finding Lucy are out the window. Maybe it's true that she came here for him, but it's also now true that he feels a strange shift in the fabric of the sky, as if a weightless girl pulls the entire atmosphere with her when she leaves his room in the middle of the night. The first thing Colin notices when he reaches Lucy's field is that the snow is undisturbed. He tells himself it's fine. He doesn't even know if Lucy would leave footprints, but somehow he knows she hasn't been back. He's panting by the time he gets to the shed and bursts through the door. The blankets on the old air mattress are smooth and untouched. Lucy's book sits, undisturbed, on the table, a dried piece of lavender marking the page.
He's running on adrenaline, and before he realizes it, he's gripping the handrail and climbing the steps of Ethan Hall. The bell has rung, the halls are empty, and a strange sense of déjà vu washes over him. He looks in every classroom on the first floor before heading upstairs. In the library, he checks the little alcove near the storage closet where she likes to sneak away and wait for him to finish work. She's not there. Colin checks the bathrooms on the second floor, peeks into each classroom that he passes, the dining hall, and even the janitor's closet. Nothing. He texts Jay to meet him near the auditorium. Jay comes whistling down the hall, but the moment he sees Colin, his expression sobers.
"Whoa, what's wrong?"
"Have you seen Lucy?"
"Not since yesterday."
Colin presses his forehead against the window.
"Call, what?"
"She's gone." His voice sounds so hollow and strange, like it belongs to someone else, and his breath fogs up the glass in front of him. "She was with me last night, and when I woke up, she was gone."
"Relax, she's probably just with—"
"She doesn't have anyone else." He meets Jay's eyes, waiting, wanting him to understand what he's saying without actually having to say it.
"I think we're having a moment here,"
Jay says, trying to ease Colin's suffering. It works, and he almost smiles. Then, serious again, Jay adds,
"She's kind of a quirky girl, isn't she?"
Yeah."
"All right, man. Let's find your Lucy."
But they don't find her. When they trudge out to the trail, Jay doesn't say a word. When they circle the entire lake, he follows in Colin's wake. When they cut across the snow-covered field and step inside the little shed to find it empty, he doesn't ask Colin any questions. Lucy doesn't come back that night. And when Colin skips school the next morning to wait for her in the shed, she doesn't show up then either. For 10 days he looks. He goes to class, he works when he has to, he finds his way to the trail where she woke up, hoping she'll be there again. Maybe she'll walk toward him, wearing her ass-kicking boots and a stolen uniform that's too big. He considers telling someone that she's missing, but then realizes there's nobody to tell. No one even notices that the pretty girl with the unsettling eyes and snow-colored hair is gone. Finally, he can't take the dorm, the school, the shed, any of it. Every single wall is imprinted with her shape, her willowy shadow. He bursts from the grounds on his single speed, blowing powdered snow and slush over the sidewalk as he takes off. Legs pumping, heart racing, blood so hot, so hot, so hot in his legs, his chest, his grip so tight he can feel electric pulses of pain up and down his newly healed arm. He jumps from curbs and trucks, train cars, and the cables between. He rides over an icy rope bridge he's never been able to balance on before, along a narrow train track, and slips only twice. The sound of the train as it roars down the track, closer and closer, only makes him see more clearly, breathe freer, feel alive. He does backflips he shouldn't. He rides until his outsides feel as battered as his insides. He tries to pretend that he's not looking in every shadow for her. He decides it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Death lingers in cars, in quiet school buildings, and beneath the freezing earth. Death is everywhere, but his ghost is gone. When he makes it back to his room in the thick of the night, he's bruised and covered in scrapes. He suspects one of his ribs is cracked, but he's alive, and Lucy is only a memory.
Chapter 16. Her. Lucy hovers on the edge of a dream when the air seems to change around her. Behind her eyes it's been wonderfully dark, but it's so simple to lift her lids, let in the dull sunrise that creeps into the room. Colin is there, sleeping and warm. Somehow in the night they've changed places. She's behind him with arms wrapped around his ribs. "Are you working breakfast?" She glances at the clock. It's already 7. "You're going to be late." He rolls over so fast it's jarring, his eyes full of terror and relief. And fury.
"Lucy."
Fury. He grabs her, pulling her to him so fast that she gasps as he presses his face into her neck. She closes her eyes, and the rapid beat of his heart moves through him and into her, vibrating her silent chest, and she feels so full, almost carbonated. He makes a sound of frustration, almost a howl, as if he can't hold her tight enough, can't wrap enough of himself around her. She laughs and urges him onto his back, but when she looks down, she realizes he's not laughing. "What's wrong? And what happened to you?" She reaches for a scrape on his forehead, an angry bruise on his chin. Those weren't there before. He sits up abruptly, and she slides from his lap onto the foot of the bed, landing a few feet away from him. His fury is bigger now. There's more fire than affection in his hazel eyes.
"Where have you been?"
"What are you talking about?" she asks, reaching for him again. "You've been asleep. Last night was—" She stops, terrified now that what they did was only a strange, dark dream. "Last night you touched me and I thought—"
"Last night? Last night, Lucy? Last night you weren't here. You've been gone for almost 2 weeks.
Cold fingers slip up inside her chest and curl around where her heart used to beat. "What?" "We just have to wait for you to vanish. Thankfully, most do."
"Where have you been?"
She can see it now. The subtle changes that happen to the living in only a few short days. His hair is the tiniest bit longer. A cut on his knuckle has healed over, and new ones surround the fading mark. "I didn't know I was gone." He yanks at his hair before standing and walking to his closet. He's in a different pair of boxers and begins pulling on clothing as if he doesn't want to be seen. A wrinkled dress shirt and blazer, his school tie left open around the very neck she finally kissed. Layer upon layer that separates him from her.
"Luce, I last saw you 10 days ago. It was December 7th. Today is the 17th.
Her stomach drops into an abyss. "I don't understand," she says.
"I looked for you. At school, the trail, the shed."
He stops and presses his knuckles into his chest roughly, as if it hurts the same way hers does.
1 minute you were here, and then you were just gone. Where did you go?"
He steps closer and then away, making a fist. He seems torn between wanting to come to her and wanting to punch the wall. "You fell asleep, and for the first time I was able to close my eyes and dream. It didn't even seem that long. I saw this dark trail underwater. I walked to the end where it was dark and calm, and then I woke up just now."
"Well,"
he says, picking something up from the corner of the room and placing it on the bed. Her clothes from that night. She hadn't even realized she was wearing nothing but underwear. She crosses her arms over her bare chest, suddenly self-conscious. She sees him wince, but he says,
"I'm glad you felt super calm on the black underwater super trail. I was freaking out thinking I'd never see you again."
"Colin, I'm so—"
"I have class."
The walk across campus is excruciating. He won't talk. He won't look at her. Worse, he won't touch her. She reaches over, tentatively putting her hand on his, and he pulls back, like he's surprised all over again by how it feels. She'd hoped her touch would be familiar, comforting even, but maybe the quiet buzz of sensation only reminds him how impermanent she is. "I had no idea I would disappear." Her steps slow, then falter, widening the space between them. He exhales slowly before stopping, turning to face her.
"I know."
Is this how breakups happen? Someone disappears, literally or metaphorically, and the rhythm is forever ruined? I would have been a mess if the situation were reversed. He reaches for her, but then shoves his hand into his hair.
"I'm not trying to be a dick. I seriously thought you were gone for good. I'm just really freaked.
Apparently there will be no comforting touch in this reconciliation, and this thought leaves her overwhelmingly sad. She hates having no answers. She died, she's back, and she wants to be near him with every particle of her strange body. And still, there is absolutely no meaning to any of it. I'm here, she says lamely. His eyebrows pull together and his eyes darken a shade.
For how long? I mean, how can we know?
Shrugging, she looks past him at the trees rooted so firmly in the frozen ground, at the buildings that have been there for more than a century. Ghosts have haunted the world since the beginning of time, and suddenly, she's plagued with the desire to know how to do it right.
Chapter 17. Him. So she was just back? Like, with no explanation of where she'd been? Jay's stretched out on his bed, thumbing through an old magazine he found under his pillow. Colin doesn't look too closely. Yeah, it's sort of... His eyes move to the ceiling. Complicated. Complicated. Dude, you're talking to the guy who took 2 chicks to the formal and managed to get away with it. I think I can keep up. Jay, this isn't a joke. With a bored sigh, Jay sits up, throws his feet over the side of the bed, and assesses Colin. Look, I know this isn't a joke, okay? And I get that Lucy's different from other girls. I've never seen you dive this deep into anything, he says, lifting a single brow for emphasis. I just want to know that you're okay. I am, Colin says. It sounds like a lie, even to him. If he were okay, he would have told Lucy everything, including his role in her murderer being caught, including the fact that he was the last person to see her alive and couldn't save her. The superstitious fraction of him feels like he needs to hold some detail back, as if the entire truth would untie the balloon from the cart, and he'd be left to watch it drift away. What if she went on a bender? She didn't. Or I don't know, Call, back to a boyfriend in Portland for a week. I wasn't kidding when I called her mysterious. Literally no one around here knows her, except you and me. If I said Lucy who hangs with Colin, it'd take anyone else 5 minutes to remember what she even looks like. Colin stares at him, hoping to burn a hole in Jay's forehead. I can handle this. Are you sure? Because when she was gone, you were flipping out. I know you've lost your entire family, but I've never seen you like that before. You didn't talk to me or Dot or even Joe. When was the last time you talked to Joe? When Colin doesn't answer, Jay presses on. And what if it happens again? You gonna be okay then, too? Colin pushes away from the desk and scrubs his face with his hands. The answer to that is a big, unequivocal no, but there's no way he can tell Jay that. We're working it out. It won't happen again. We're good. This is one of those moments that define why they're friends. Jay knows Colin is lying his ass off, but he also knows it's the only way he's holding it together. See, this is why I don't do relationships. Jay makes little quotation marks with his fingers, and Colin rolls his eyes. Sure it is. All right, then, Jay says. Where is the magic, elusive spirit girl anyway? Colin's head snaps up, and he gapes at him. Jay's hit awfully close to home, but he's smacking his gum and flipping through his magazine again. Clueless. She'll be here any minute. Colin closes his math book and glances at the clock, trying not to appear as restless as he feels. Jay stands and adjusts his baseball cap, walks to the window and back, before resuming his seat on the edge of his bed. He's as anxious to get out of there as Colin is. We seriously can't leave until she gets here? I'm bored. Colin shakes his head. I want her to come along. The night before Lucy came back, the night he almost rode himself into the ground, was the first time Colin felt sane in days, like he'd beaten his anxiety into submission. Some of the stuff he and Jay have done is a bit crazy and a lot dangerous, but it's always been the case that, on his bike or board, everything blurs at the edges until he's focused on one thought: breathe. The wilder he is, the safer he feels. It's a paradox he can live with. It's just that now he wants Lucy to stay close. It's a good thing Lucy's cool, or I'd have no choice but to kick your ass, Jay says. So where are we going? They put in this killer jump at the track, but last week it was full of Xavier posers, so that's out. Colin fiddles with the straps on his biking shoes, remembering the night with Lucy at the lake, her legs dangling to the knees in the frozen water. Other than the section near the oak tree, she seems to like water, the pond, the lake, her crazy dream about underwater blackness. I think the lake's frozen over. No way will anyone else be down there. You up for some tricks? Jay agrees and heads down to mess around with his bike, while Colin searches through the piles of clean laundry for something warmer to wear. Lucy materializes at the door, wearing a new stolen uniform. This version has the ugly navy slacks, which is probably why it was easy for her to find and snag. Hardly any of the girls wear them. But her black boots lace almost to her knees, and her hair is piled in a messy heap on top of her head and bound with a bright red ribbon. He has no idea where she found it, but she looks like punk rock trying to go straight. He still can't get over how relieved he is to see her. The weirdness of having a girlfriend he can barely kiss seems so unimportant compared to the relief he feels at having her back. Not exactly standard attire, he says, tugging on her white Oxford where she's knotted it just beneath her ribs, mocking the cold air around her. Her mouth curls up into a teasing smile. The administration is free to notice and unofficially expel me. He laughs. Lucy's been lurking around campus for more than 2 months, minus the 10 days of unexpected vanish, and no teacher really bothers to question her presence, let alone her decidedly non-dress code boots. She glances at his bike shoes, hanging from his free hand. Where are we headed? Your favorite place. The lake. Sure. To ride? She looks skeptical. Grinning, he pulls her with him as he turns to leave. Trust me, it'll be fun.
Chapter 18. Her. Lucy hasn't been back to the lake for weeks. Not since the day Colin walked with her around the entire lakeside trail, and she discovered what she now knows is the site of her murder. So while Colin and Jay prep their bikes, she wanders off, taking the time to actually look around. Winter has dug its claws into this part of the world, and everything looks at once more barren and also softer. Snow blankets everything. Tree branches are softened with white and blue reflected from the glacial water. In her memory, the autumn leaves are flames, and her disorienting awakening is a hell long since past. She finds where she landed, and for some reason is surprised that no traces remain. There's no girl-shaped bruise in the earth, no chalk outline of a body. She fell, she's here, and it's time to carry on. Heading back to the lake, she sees Jay and Colin on the ice, zipping around. Wait, she says, you're riding on the lake? Yeah, it's frozen, Colin says, hopping up and down on his bike. The tires squeak against the ice as if in agreement. Solid. Are you crazy? Absolutely, Jay calls. Before she can respond, Colin has his hands up, placating. No, honestly, it's safe. It's at least 3 inches thick, and we do it all the time. He clearly expects her to be horrified. Anyone hearing this should be horrified. But Lucy isn't. She's only curious. 3 inches thick doesn't sound like a lot, and she gives in to the strange high that suddenly tears through her. She almost believes if she looked down at her arms, she would see red blood surging through the newly solid veins. Sitting on a snowbank at the lakeshore, Lucy watches the 2 boys trace snakes of tire prints in the thin layer of crunchy snow on the surface. She's never seen Colin like this before. She loves how Lucy is, how he lets the bike be hard while he prefers flexibility, molding to its movements, sliding over the pedals and leaning into the force of every sharp turn. He spells her name in the layer of snow over ice, and he hops on his front tire from a soft embankment, landing in a crouch on the pedals. "Want to try?" he calls. Shaking her head quickly, she answers, "No." He laughs and pedals over, carefully kissing her cheek. He looks down at her as if surprised. It feels different here, where it's snowing and the air is heavy with water on the verge of solidifying. She presses her fingers to her skin when he leaves, pushing the memory of the sensation farther inside. Jay spends a while packing snow into a ramp, and they take turns launching from it. The ice creaks when they land where the tire tracks have patterned the lake, and they instinctively shift the angle of their jumps to avoid the spot. Despite their care and obvious skill, she looks down, suddenly unable to watch. Instead, she focuses on the way her skin swirls in the strange blue light. Tiny ice crystals land on her arm and then sink in, becoming part of her. Colin bikes over and kisses her again, releasing a puff of steam against her face. It disappears into her cheek. "Jumps ready," Jay yells from the middle of the lake. Colin pedals away from her before turning and taking off hard down the hill and onto the ramp. He flies through the air. His torso twists and arches, and for only a moment, she can see his eyes close in euphoria, can imagine what it would be like to see him make that face closer to her own. His arms flex, and his hands squeeze the grips as he recovers and lands. Releasing a loud whoop, he circles back as Jay takes off. Over and over they ride the ramp, and each turn their jumps are more daring, their lands are more solid, and their cheeks glow redder in the frigid air. "I'm starving," Jay yells as he bikes to the lake's edge and pulls his phone from his pocket to check the time. "You're always starving. 10 more minutes." Colin pedals to Lucy. "Are you bored?" As soon as she shakes her head, he's off again. But this time, what has to be his 20th jump, Lucy can tell immediately that he's crooked, too far to the right, and when he lands, the ice splits open with a deafening crack. Water, blue and sharp, bubbles up and across the surface. Colin slips under as if he's melted into the lake. There's not even a moment when he gripped anything but his bike handles. It all happens so fast, but the yawning pause after he disappears feels like it lasts a year, and never has the world been more silent. He's gone. Beneath the snow and thick ice, Lucy is screaming and Jay is screaming, digging his arms into the water, reaching wildly for Colin. The first thought hits her like a dark shadow. When he's dead, will he be able to find her? "Colin!" Jay yells, lying flat on the ice and leaning over the jagged hole. He shoves his arms in again and again, feeling for any trace of a body. The ice where he leans groans and cracks, and he scrambles back as Colin appears and punches at the solid surface. Jay tries to grab his hand, but he can't reach him. "Get him!" Lucy screams, scrambling closer to the edge. "Jay, get him out! Get him out! Get him out!" Jay lunges, but Colin is too far away now, moving beneath the ice in the wrong direction. Lucy shoves him aside and dives in without thought, but the water pushes her up, bobbing her uselessly against the ice. She has no strength against the weight of water that presses into her. Colin falls unconscious, his face eerily blue as he begins to slip away. It makes him look already preserved. With a surge of wild strength, she ducks under to grab his sinking hand, pulling his arm close enough that Jay can grab him. He's screaming so many words at her as he pulls Colin out, but she doesn't hear any of them because she's already out and up, running for help. She charges down the trail, screaming her head off and intent on heading straight for the kitchen or Joe's or somewhere where someone can help. She falls in the snow and gets up again, clothes leaden with water that's quickly turning to ice, and limbs propelled by terror. "Luce?" It has to be a hallucination. In his voice she hears relief. But it's impossible because she just left him unconscious and frozen and dying on the lake.
Luce, stop.
Whipping around, she sees Colin behind her on the trail. Somehow he manages to both smile and apologize with his eyes.
Stop,
he says.
Please.
She can't see through him, can't blink him away. He's there, saying her name one more time and waiting for her to respond, hands curled into fists at his sides. Relief floods her so rapidly that she's choking on words, unable to speak. All she can do is turn and run, throw her entire body against his. He catches her, and where he's always been hard and too solid, now he's simply warm and perfect. His forearms wrap around her back, pulling her to him, and he presses his face into her neck. Not too hot, not too much. Just Colin and the contours of his eyes and lips and nose and chin against her skin. She feels him kissing her, feels his mouth open on her throat, his lips tasting her skin before he whispers, "Hi." Strange, but perfect. They feel the same. She wants to scream words of relief into the air. Her question, "How did you get out?" comes out shrill, her voice disappearing in a rasp at the end. Colin silently bends and kisses where her neck dips into her shoulder. "Where are we?" he whispers, voice heavy with awe. "Is this how it always looks to you?" "Where's Jay?" she asks, looking behind him down the trail. Muffled shouting drifts from the lake, and Lucy registers with a leaden clarity that Jay is there, panicking. But Colin is here, and dry. Understanding seeps into her, slow and thick. His skin is like her skin, and it's warm and soft and familiar. His skin isn't freezing. Looking back down the trail again and behind Jay's crouched body, Lucy can see the top of Colin's soaking wet hair and a single unmoving hand against the ice. Panic and confusion flood her. "Hey," she says, tugging at his hair so that he meets her eyes. And it's then that she finally sees what he sees when he looks at her. His irises swirl, flames licking. Where his used to be amber dark, honey flecked with gold, now they are molten. He's afraid, excited, and hopeful. And she can see, too, that he knows something is wrong. He knows, and he doesn't care. "Just touch me." He shakes his head, looking around as if caught inside a wholly different world. "Just pretend it's okay." She nods, lifting herself on her tiptoes to kiss him. Lips press, tongues touch, and then it deepens finally. The warmth and wet of a real kiss, the vibrating taste of his sounds, and the pressing hunger of Colin finally able to take more. He grows frantic, and a spreading tingle engulfs her skin, flames down her neck and across her chest. She feels the heat in 10 pulses in her fingers, 10 pulses in her toes, and yet, while his eyes fall closed, hers cannot. She's simply fascinated with what's happening. He exhales through his nose and lets out a sound of longing that is so strained and tight, she digs her fingers into his hair, wraps everything that she can around him. But it isn't enough. She's not strong enough to keep him yet. Somehow, in the split second before it happens, she feels it. A small jerk to the back of his ribs, the impact of life being forced back into him, or of him being forced back to life. And then he's gone, hurled backward through the air, gasping and choking, propelled by an invisible band around his chest. Lucy is left alone on the trail where, for an achingly perfect moment, he was just like her.
Chapter 19. Him. The change is slow at first. Silence is broken by a rhythmic beep. Darkness gives way to light. Numbness bleeds into pain. He's somewhere between awake and asleep, or maybe alive and dead. Colin always thought that dying would be the hard part, but feeling life seep back into his body is pain unlike anything he's ever known. It burns. His fingertips feel capped with lead weights, red with heat. Every inch of his skin pricks and pulses. The pain is so intense he can hear it, as if he's on fire and the flames lick and tick near his ears. Is he dreaming? Only a dream could whisk you from heaven to hell in moments and leave you willing to give up anything to do it over again. Wasn't it only seconds ago that he was somewhere else? Somewhere both too bright and too dark? A world made of prisms of color warping rhythmically, as if everything around him pulsed with energy. For a flash, he remembers his skin prickling all over with the most intense anticipation he'd ever felt. A face floats in the hollow space between his memories. Cool lips grow warm against his, and color swirls and irises that tell a story he wants to remember. He finally got to touch her. If he sleeps again, maybe he'll go back. Maybe she'll be there too. Voices seep into the quiet, and he opens his eyes, blinking against the dim light. Stark walls surround him, and the nauseating traces of antiseptic and coffee hang in the stale air. Everything around him seems lifeless. The infirmary. He flexes his hands, but they move in jerks. His fingers are stiff and numb like rusty cogs. Colin tries to sit, but quickly realizes it's a bad idea. The room shifts and bends in front of him, and he collapses back into a pillow that's too soft, hitting his head on the bed frame. Tubes and wires wrap around his arms, and each breath hurts more than the last. It feels like he's inhaling propane, exhaling fire, yet he's shivering. A girl outside the room is asking to see him. He recognizes his name and turns his head toward her familiar voice. His lips know the shape of her name, but when he tries to say it, there's no sound. "I promise I won't stay more than a few minutes," she says. "I told you, I can't let you in there." The other woman's voice is familiar, but where he's used to hearing soft honey, he now hears only edge. "I'm not leaving," the girl says flatly. "Please tell him Lucy is here." Lucy. Blonde hair and swirling eyes. The lake. The ice. Cold like he's never known. The fear that he would die, and then those fleeting moments when he didn't care. "Do you think I don't know what you are?" The voices are closer now, quieter. "No way am I letting you get to that sweet boy." The silence outside his room stretches, making the air around him feel even more stagnant and stale. He opens his mouth and exhales Lucy's name, but it's too quiet for anyone to hear. "You know about the others? Where are they?" she asks. "If there's even one more here, that's one too many. You're going to break that boy's heart. Or worse." Maggie. Colin remembers her name, and everything comes back in a cluster of images and sounds. How many times he's been in this bed. How many times Maggie has set his dislocated shoulder, stitched his cheek, given him everything from aspirin to morphine. "Please," Lucy says. "Just 1 minute. I promise I won't stay long." "Listen," Maggie says more gently. "There's nothing good that can come out of this. Leave that boy alone. Go take your haunting somewhere else." Haunting. The door swings open, and Maggie enters alone. Her tall shadow slants across the far wall as she moves to the bed. Behind her, Lucy lingers in the hallway, catching his eye. "Hi," she waves. He lifts his arm a few inches off the bed to wave back. Lucy's skin is pale and almost glows beneath the artificial light. She doesn't look real. The monitor registers the blip in his heart rate when he realizes that for the first time ever, Lucy looks like exactly what she is. With one more apologetic smile, she disappears down the hall. "Well, look who's awake." Colin turns his attention to Maggie as she begins adjusting his tubes, checking the monitors. He wants to ask her what happened with Lucy, how she knows that Lucy is a ghost, and what she meant by haunting. He wants to ask her if he hallucinated the world of light and shadow, silver fire from Lucy's touch. His heart squeezes painfully at the thought that it wasn't real. But when he meets Maggie's eyes, he realizes she's waiting for him to say something. "Sorry, what?" he asks. "I asked you how your pain is, honey." He stretches his arms. They hurt. His head hurts. His legs hurt. "I'm a little rough," he manages. "Can you give me a number?" She points to a series of cartoon faces on a poster, ranging from smiling to crying, with a score below each. I'd say 8. His skin screams 10. It feels like it's peeling away from his fingertips to his torso. Nodding, she pushes the contents of a syringe into his IV. "That's what I thought." Colin watches the clear fluid disappear into his arm. He remembers the burning cold, the colors, the girl. "What did you give me?" he asks. Whatever it was, he wants more. "Don't worry, sweetness. It's fentanyl. You were screaming when you came in. Should have taken you to the hospital." "Can you let me see her? Lucy?" Colin wonders if he's imagining the way she seems to stiffen. "You need to rest now, sweet boy. Joe went to get some dinner and will be back soon." He doesn't stay awake long enough to see Maggie leave the room. Opening his eyes feels more challenging than lifting a car. The weight of sleep is unbelievable, and it's only the sound of Joe walking into the room with Maggie that convinces Colin to struggle against the pull to return to sleep and memories of Lucy and her luminous world. Joe tells him what Colin has already remembered. He fell into the lake, and the low temperature caused his heart to slow. Luckily, the exposure was minimal, and being young and fit enough means there should be no lasting effects. Apparently, word of the accident has spread across campus, and some of the braver students have begun venturing out on the ice to see the scene of the crime for themselves. Joe's rambling fades out when Dot walks in, all business, and she wordlessly takes in the scene. Colin in bed with cuts and bruises that cover pretty much everything not hidden by the cotton gown. Joe trying to avoid yelling by chatting incessantly. The beeping monitors on a cart near the bed. "Colin," is all she says. "Hey, boss." "That's going to stay until you're asleep for the night. All right?" Joe's forehead pinches into about 100 wrinkles, and for the first time ever, it occurs to Colin that the man who took his first sick day when he fell through his porch might actually be done in by a punk kid giving him a heart attack. "I need to go back and make sure the students are off the lake." Colin's stomach cramps with guilt. "Okay," he mumbles. In an uncharacteristic gesture of physical affection, Joe bends and kisses his forehead. "I'm glad you're okay." He turns and leaves, his old blue coat folded neatly over his arm. Colin looks to Dot the second Joe's out the door. "Where's my bike?" he asks, but his voice turns to air on the last 2 words. "Lost in the lake is my guess," she answers, patting his arm gently. Anyone else might be full of "I told you so's," but instead he can see the apology all over her face. He's in the infirmary,
suffering from the effects of hypothermia because he was horsing around on a lake in December, somewhere he shouldn't have even been. He won't be able to work for who knows how long, and Dot gets that it kills him that his favorite bike is gone. I know we haven't talked in a couple weeks, but you'd tell me if something was going on, right? Something driving you to do crazy stunts on a frozen lake? He can tell that she's barely suppressing the need to chew him out, and he nods, smile tight. Her face registers that he hasn't really answered. Think you're up for another visitor? Almost as soon as Colin nods, Jay walks in, stands at the foot of the bed, and looks at Colin